Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is a meeting of Cabinet. Today's date, the 22nd of December, 2025. Yeah, everyone's present and correct. Thank you. So I'll start with tonight's apologies to the meeting. There are none because all members of the Cabinet are present. Item number 2, tonight's agenda, the declarations of interest. Any members or officers, do you have anything to declare with relation to any item on tonight's agenda? None, thank you. Item number 3 on tonight's agenda is the minutes of the last meeting. Do members have anything they need to advise me of in terms of any comments relating to accuracy or otherwise why I might not sign the minutes, including those of the closed session at the last meeting? None, thank you. Okay, the meeting minutes have been signed. Item number 4 is urgent business. There is none notifiable. Item 5, tonight's agenda is the chair's announcements. Just to point out to anyone participating, closing the public gallery, that we have 13 speakers to item 9 on tonight's agenda, which I'm sure everyone is aware is related to the draft budget. And I just ask that the members and public speakers stick to the 3 minutes, because obviously we have a large amount. 14, sorry, Councillor McCord, I always kind of assume you're speaking anyway. I'm not normally short of words. We will, I just ask that you stick to the 3 minutes if we can. I'll let you finish sentence, obviously, just so we can get through this. It's a fairly hefty agenda here. There's a lot to get through. I want to hear all the comments that people have to make, and just the record to say that, this is a report prior to the consultation on the budget starting. And as I said on the radio this morning, we are, as an administration, are absolutely here to listen and hear the public's points of views on all of the items contained within. And over that period, we look forward to listening to residents and members and those that share their concerns with their elected members to bring them to our attention. So public participation is welcome. It's highly likely to be one of the most contributed to consultations that West Northampton Council's had in its nearly 5 years of incarnation. So we'll move on to item number 6. Tonight's agenda is the report of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, if any. I've got 2 notes down, but I've got something for Councillor Keeble. Do you have anything to add? And Sophia's over there. I've got Councillor Keeble down on here. Oh, okay. No, not tonight. And no other chairs. Councillor Purser, Councillor Atkins. No, okay. Right, we'll go on to the meaty stuff. And item 7, tonight's agenda is the Revenue Monitoring Period 7 Financial Report 25-26. Councillor Slope to introduce the report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to present the Period 7 Monitoring Revenue Report for the 2025-26 financial year. This report provides a comprehensive assessment of our financial position as we move through the 3rd quarter of the year. As you know, West Northampton Council delivers essential services to residents and businesses across the area, from care for the vulnerable adults and children to education, waste management and housing support. Today's report shows we're managing the financial resources entrusted to us against the backdrop of significant demand pressures that are being experienced across the local government sector. So the overall financial position, the council is forecasting a net overspend of 10.5 million against a 431.8 million budget. This figure is arrived at after the use of 11.4 million in general contingency reserves. This overspend represents 2.4% of our net budget, and while any variance concerns us, it's important to note that it's within manageable parameters given the scale of the challenges we're facing. The position has deteriorated by £907,000 since period 4, which requires our careful attention and robust mitigation strategies. So the key pressure areas, we have adult social care, which is forecasting an overspend of 12 million, representing an 8% variance. This increase of 1.6 million from period 4 is primarily driven by growing pressures in the independent care sector, totaling 10.4 million. These pressures stem from a structural deficit of 3.6 million from clients requiring care after the budget was set, inflationary uplifts of 2.2 million above budget assumptions, partly driven by a 6.7% increase in the national living wage and a 2.7 million from increased demand for services. We also have legacy savings targets of 1.8 million that remain undeliverable this year, though this has been incorporated into next year's budgets. I'm pleased to report that 61% of this year's 12.2 million savings target have been delivered in full, with a further 2.5 million on track. So on to the Northampton Children's Trust, which is forecasting an overspend of 13.5 million, a 14.1% variance, and an increase of 6.2 million from period 4. Our share of the additional financial contributions to the trust above the approved contract sum of 12.8 million. The largest driver remains placement costs for children in care, with a forecast overspend of 8.6 million for our share. This reflects non-deliverable savings of 2 million, additional demand above budgeted levels, and increased placement costs driven by complexity of children's needs, particularly in residential care and secure and parent and baby placements. While these figures are challenging, I want to emphasize the positive work underway. We're seeing fewer costly emergency placements, and we have a range of property projects in progress to reduce supported accommodation costs and provide more in-house solutions. Next, I'll move on to the dedicated schools grants, which is forecasting an increased overspend of 35.2 million, primarily within the high needs block, driven by increasing demand and complexity for children with special educational needs. This brings our accumulated deficit to a forecast of 56.7 million by year end. While this is concerning, the government's statutory override remains in place until the 31st of March 2028, protecting our core budget. More encouragingly, the government has indicated it will take over SEND funding from 28-29 and does not expect local authorities to fund future SEND costs from general funds. We await further details on how historic deficits will be funded. Moving on to the areas of good performance, it's important to balance challenges with the areas we're performing well in. Place and economy is forecasting a 1.3 million underspend driven by staffing efficiencies and additional income generation and lower utility costs. Resources is projecting a 0.8 million underspend through managing staff vacancies and additional income. The housing revenue account remains balanced at 0.3 million contribution to reserves. Moving on to savings delivery. Of our 24.6 million savings requirement for this year, I'm pleased to report that 11.1 million, or 45%, has been delivered, with high confidence that a further 8.8 million will be achieved by year end. However, 2.2 million has been assessed as unlikely to be delivered, with a further 2.9 million rated as amber and requiring close monitoring. Looking ahead and mitigation. Our directorates are working intensively on mitigation strategies, including accelerating existing efficiency programs, reviewing funding opportunities and maximising income generation. We're also pursuing the flexible use of capital receipts to fund transformational projects worth 8.1 million that will deliver 49.6 million in savings over the medium term. The adult social care programme and the trust transformation work are critical to addressing structural demand pressures. While these take time to deliver benefits, we're seeing positive early indicators. So conclusions and recommendations. In conclusion, while our Period 7 position presents challenges, particularly in demand-led services, these pressures reflect a national picture across local government. We have robust monitoring in place, clear mitigation strategies underway, and we're taking decisive action to manage the position. I ask Cabinet to note the forecast outturn position and associated risks, note our savings deliverable assessments, note the Treasury Management update, and I plan to recommend to full Council the approval of new flexible use of capital receipts items detailed in the report. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slope. Very detailed introduction, and a couple of points to note on that from myself is quite startling debt figures, which I'm sure we'll be referring to again later, some legacy debt and the ongoing spiralling debt that you call upon there. So first speakers, I've got 4 people down to speak on this item. Members, first is Councillor Irving Swift. You've got a microphone there, Councillor.
Thank you so much, Chairman. So, well, I have to start. It's the 22nd of December, so I'm going to help you all to celebrate, so I'll try to be short. After 6 months in power and the publication of Period 7, what to say? As in French, we will say, oh la la. It's all about how to balance the 25-26 budget. And now you discover that this budget, 25-26, as all the previous and future budgets, is tight, and rightly so. Because the taxpayer, meaning our residents, want best value for money for the delivery of our services. So, Period 7, you are overspent by 10.5 million. Your service costs are up by 6.1%, which means that after the usage of the technical, centrally controlled budget, I love that word, a predicted overspend of 2.5% of the 25-26 budget. I remind you that if you look at Notice 25 of our Section 151 officer and at the comment of our external auditor, the 25-26 budget is deliverable and of course balanced. Now my question is looking at Period 6 and the 10.5 million overspend, and knowing that historically the remaining period before the closure of account are the most challenging, how will you close the gap? The following might help. Well, for once, I am going to help you a bit here. In the narrative, you have added a 3.6 million structural deficit for adult social care. If you accept this choice of word, will you able to close the gap? The DSG has added a pressure of 4 million on the balance sheet. And finally, having accused the previous administration of borrowing too much, another surprises, the borrowing requirement jumped to 150 million, so more than 50 million, an increase by a third. In summary, you were elected with a mandate to cut and transform. In 6 months, you spent. So now tell me what you are going to cut.
Thank you, Councillor Swift. Second speaker, Councillor Keeble. You have a microphone, Councillor. I've got both of you, actually. Whoever first. No preference.
Having been around for a number of years now, this is very concerning. Normally, when we're at this stage, we're looking at a tough ask, but for me, the fact that we've used contingency is very concerning. And the fact that we're now just on Period 7, when we get into the period when we often see some of the biggest pressures, How confident are the administration that we'll be able to not spiral out of control at this stage of the financial year? The fact that we are now already £10.5 million overspent, how are the figures looking for period 9? Because I'll take note that these are period 7, so only just halfway through the year. And what measures are you taking to scrutinise the levels of spending like you have in previous years by chambers where you basically focus on unnecessary spending?
Thank you, Councillor. And final speaker, Councillor Harris, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair, very much. Just want to clarify one thing, because I think there's a bit of confusion. My understanding is the figure that you're presenting here is the projected year-end overspend. Clearly, it could get worse because there are other factors that could come into play, but that is the forecast as it currently stands, if I've got that correctly. I've got a few questions. Councillor Slope, you won't be surprised to hear me raise the old contingency question. Where is he? I can't see him. He's here. He's got his back to me tonight. I have to mention it simply because he's turning. Thank you. Just on the basis that, of course, we had the conversation way back at the beginning when you took over, and that contingency, as we rightly said, was built into the budget for a reason, to cover overspends that were unknown at that time. And you talked avidly about having to use the contingency to balance last year's budget, and you've already used this year's contingency. So, and I think there's contingency being built into next year's budget as well. So I hope that you understand that contingency is part of the thing that we need to do often to balance the book. So just wanted to flag that, if I may. I've got a couple of questions, though, if I may. One concern I've got, and this relates and will come up later in regards to next year's budget, we're still talking about efficiencies and savings. When do efficiencies and savings actually become cuts? Because I suspect we're now at that point where we're starting to talk still about efficiencies, but I suspect they're more likely to be actually cuts in service, cuts in headcount, cuts in resources. And I think that we need to make sure, as councillors, we go through all of those lines in absolute detail to be sure that we know exactly what those implications are. Borrowing position, again, it was one of the mantras we've talked about in your literature many times. You were going to talk about cutting borrowing. Borrowing, as we know, has gone up. And again, it's important that you make sure that the promises you make, you can keep. I've got a very big concern about the statutory override on the high needs block. I know that it says that government will deal with it at some point. It's still not clear how that funding will actually be dealt with, whether it'll just be written off or whether there will be something we'll have to deal with. But it's a significant number, and by the time we get to the end of 4 years, it will be huge. And of course, actually, there is real cash being used to fund that. So although they may write off that amount of money, it is our cash as a council that we're having to use to fund it. And that means that that money cannot be used for other things, and it cannot be invested, for instance. So will government, firstly, how much is that? What are we talking about in terms of the material losses as regards to investments we can't make? But also, is government going to compensate us for the fact that we will have lost out on those investments during that period of time as well, not just pay us back or wipe out or whatever it might look like? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. I'm sure we may be able to ask our esteemed guests, our members of the opposition in the audience, about the question about what they might be able to do to help our councils in Parliament. We can come to that later. I'm now to invite members of the Cabinet to comment on the budget. Those, I know we've all met in private, but if there's anything to say in public, to Councillor Slope before I pass back to Councillor Slope. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to say, in terms of the comments around about the forecast overspend position, that there are a number of controls that are currently in place in terms of spending control panels for any future decision for anyone to spend over £500, and also in terms of any decision with regard to recruitment also subject to a recruitment panel process as well. So it's just to reassure members that there are some strict controls in place. And from an officer perspective, we'll be trying our absolute best to, reduce that forecast overspend as much as possible. However, the position that we're reporting at the moment is the latest position that that we are aware of at this current moment in time.
Yeah, there was a whole plethora of questions there. I don't propose to go through them all because I think we'll be repeating those on the draft budget side of things. If there's anything specific to be answered that's unanswered by the end of the evening, you can always drop me an email and we can deal with it then. As for the strange. As for the override, how would that be paid off by government? We simply haven't been told yet. So we don't know how that money will be, how the historical debt will be paid. So that is a concern to us all. But at the moment, if we try and budget for it, we'll be trying to find even harder place to find money than we're currently doing at the moment. So yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Slope. I'll bring Martin in on a couple of points. I think he's made some notes there to assist.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on a couple of technical points coming out of those questions. James has picked up on one of them, which is about the spending panels being in place across all of the directorates. Every post that is vacant has to go through an approval to recruit process to make sure it is absolutely critically essential before we appoint into those roles. So those panels are in place across the organisation. To confirm Councillor Harris's point, 10.5 million is the forecast outturn. So it's the forecast position at the end of the financial year. So it's just to clarify that point. It doesn't mean that things might get worse over the next few months, but based on the information we had at P7, it was the forecast at year end. So just to pick up on that point. Period 8, Councillor Holland-Delamere picked up on the latest position that we've got. Period 8, we're just pulling together at the moment. It looks like there are some further pressures which are going to increase the forecast outturn by year end. Period 9, we're coming towards the end of period 9, don't have that information just yet. As soon as we've got the period 8 position, we will circulate it round to council members like we always do, just to make you aware of that. And I think the final point is just on, touched upon by Councillor Slope really at the end there, just the DSG position. Yes, there was some, it sounded like encouraging news coming out of the government in relation to that, and the department limits taking over those costs from financial year 28-29. I think in terms of the cumulative position, up until that point, uncertain what's going to happen. So financial support potentially given. We don't know what type of support that will be at this point in time. By the time we get there, I think our DSG deficit will be in excess of £100 million, the cumulative position. So that's the scale of the issue that we've got. And again, we're just waiting to see what the outcome will be from the government in terms of how that's going to be managed going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Martin. So back to Councillor Slope. Have you anything else? Anyone else? Okay. So I need a proposer from the floor and a seconder. I'll take that to a vote. Councillor Hastie's proposing, Councillor Stansfield to second, and a vote with a show of hands to pass the report. That's unanimous. Thank you. We will move on to item number 8, the capital monitoring report, period 7. Back to Councillor Slope. You're going to be a busy man tonight, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Colleagues, last week we published our draft 26-27 capital budget, highlighting 83 million of priority investments in our communities for next year. Adult social care adaptations, highway improvements, school expansions, town centre regeneration, and better community facilities. We explained clearly to residents that despite the severe revenue pressures we inherited, capital funding is ring-fenced for exactly these infrastructure improvements. Just as a household cannot pay weekly bills from a mortgage, we cannot use capital funds for day-to-day services. But we can and must use them to build West Northamptonshire's future. Today's Period 7 monitoring report covers a full technical picture of our multi-year capital programme. £293 million general fund, and £118 million HRA through to 2030-31. This is about delivery, governance, and financial discipline. Both reports demonstrate the same commitment, ambitious investment for our residents combined with rigorous management of public money. Now to turn to the specifics and the headlines. Since our last capital monitoring report in September, we've added 20.5 million of new schemes to the programme. All have been through proper governance, property assets and capital board, PACB, executive leadership team, ELT, and where required, full council. The major addition is 10.6 million investment in leisure centre investments we approved in September, which will deliver much needed improvements to facilities across West Northamptonshire. We're also asking Cabinet today to approve 3 specific items: 475,000 for ANPR and parking equipment that supports our budget savings provisions, reprofiling £500,000 for the office optimisation project, which is progressing faster than planned, and £1 million environment within the HRA programme. Delivery progress and challenges. Now, I need to be frank with Cabinet about delivery. We're forecasting a 57.5 million slippage into future years. That's 28% of our programme. Let me put that into context. Some of the pipeline schemes where we're still working on our business cases, that's 37.2 million. These are provisional budgets included for transparency in our budget consultation, keeping residents informed about our likely plans. All of full council approval in principle and will require full business cases before they can proceed. On our approved schemes, we're looking at 20.3 million carry forward. I've discussed this extensively with officers, and there are legitimate reasons for much of this slippage. Archaeological finds at the crematorium sites requiring design changes, environmental surveys discovering protected species, changing scope requirements from schools and other partners, changing constraints in our assets team, managing multiple complex projects simultaneously. Officers have assured me that our slippage levels aren't unusual compared to similar authorities. But that doesn't mean to say we're complacent. Officers are driving improvements through the Property Assets and Capital Board, better forecasting, more realistic profiling from the start, earlier identification of risks. This is active work in progress, and I'll be monitoring delivery closely. The positive side of slippage, and let's be clear about this, is that it eases our borrowing cash flow position. Every month of delay is a month we're not paying interest on borrowed funds. That's not a reason to accept poor delivery, but it's a financial reality that partially offsets the frustration. The HRA position. On the HRA, I need to flag a difficult issue. We're writing off 1.54 million of abortive costs on Belgrave House and Avenue Campus. These schemes that proved unviable and won't proceed. That's public money spent on projects that won't deliver homes. Whilst these projects have been discussed previously, we need stronger gateway processes so viability issues are caught earlier before we incur significant costs. The HRA can't afford many more write-offs like this. I've had assurances from officers that the understanding realised has led to significant process improvements, and I'll be watching for future business cases very carefully. What we're approving today, so the ANPR equipment of 475,000, members will note that item 8 includes a capital budget allocation of 475,000 for ANPR and other parking equipment. Let me make it absolutely clear about what this decision does and doesn't represent. What we're approving today is establishing a capital budget that will be ready to deploy if required. We are getting our ducks in a row. We are not preempting consultation outcomes or making policy decisions about parking charges. The logic is straightforward. First, if consultation supports proceeding with car parking enforcement changes, procurement and installation lead times mean that we need the budget established now to avoid delay to implementation as close as possible to April 26. Second, setting up a capital budget does not automatically mean spending that budget. Until the council has its final budget decisions, we will only commit to ANPR installations which have a positive use whether or not parking charges are in place. This includes ANPR equipment which can be used to enforce time limits, where we order pay and display machines. If not required on new sites, we will hold them in store to replace units which fail. We'd only install them in new locations if the council decides to proceed with the new charges. The key principle is this: we're ensuring that we're operationally ready to implement whatever decision the Cabinet makes after genuine consultation. We're not prejudging that decision. This is prudent financial planning, not predetermination of policy outcomes. Moving to the office optimization, reprofiling is straightforward and positive. We're bringing forward £500,000 from next year because the project is ahead of schedule. This is part of our savings program, and we want to accelerate delivery to realise those savings efficiencies faster. That's good project management, delivering early benefits, exactly what we should be encouraging. The HRA environment of £1 million moves £1 million from LAHF schemes showing underspend to our streets acquisitions program. The grants element is fully protected. This is simply about deploying our own resources more effectively to acquire homes where opportunities arise. Now, moving on to financial discipline, let me address the borrowing position directly. We've added 16.7 million of new borrowing commitments since September, mainly for the leisure centre investment. Our total borrowing for the capital programme across the 4 years is now 173.6 million for general fund and 86.7 million for HRA. Every pound of borrowing has a revenue consequence. MRP and interest costs have hit our budget every year. We're managing this within our prudential indicators, but there's no infinite borrowing capacity. That's why every business case gets rigorous scrutiny, and the Section 151 officer from the 151 officer, and that's why we're right to challenge delivery timelines that affect our cash flow. The slippage, while frustrating from a delivery perspective, does help our cash flow position. We're not borrowing until we actually need the funds. Pipeline transparency, a note on transparency. We have 39.7 million of pipeline schemes in this programme, provisional budgets for schemes without full business cases yet. That includes 10 million for temporary accommodation and 19.7 million for children's accommodation. Officers have explained that these are included for transparency in our budget consultation, keeping the public informed about likely plans. I accept the rationale, but I want to be clear that these are placeholders, not committed spend. The real test will be in the business cases, and we'll apply proper scrutiny when these come forward. So looking forward, Cabinet have a capital investment programme that's ambitious in scale and delivers real improvements for residents. Schools with the places and SEND provision our children need. Housing that supports independent living and provides home for families. Infrastructure, roads, waste facilities, digital connectivity. Regeneration that brings new life and opportunity to our town centres. Community facilities from leisure centres to libraries. We're seeing genuine progress in many schemes. The leisure centre investment is moving forward. School expansions are in design. Town centre regeneration projects are taking shape. Housing acquisitions are adding to our stock, but we're also seeing the reality of major capital programmes. Complexity, dependencies, external factors that cause delay. What matters is that we have robust governance, we understand where the issues are emerging, and we intervene early. Officers are taking the right steps to improve delivery through better forecasting and active management via PACB. I'll continue to hold them to account on delivery milestones and financial discipline. As we said publicly last week, this capital investment will help Northamptonshire grow and create new opportunities and remain a great place to live, work and visit. Today's monitoring shows we're managing that programme with the rigour and discipline residents expect and deserve. The recommendations are: Cabinet is asked to note that period 7 monitoring 7 position and the changes to the programme. Approve 475,000 in ANPR capital budget. Approve the £500,000 office optimisation reprofile, and approve the £1 million HRA environment. I'm satisfied with the explanations provided and happy to recommend for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Slope. So I have 2 speakers, I believe starting with Councillor Holland-Delamere on item 8, and then Councillor Harris afterwards.
In previous years, you are right indeed that £89 million worth of capital funding did slip 1 year. It's still very concerning that some of the delivery of these projects is taking time. I recognise from past experience of projects we've discussed here about the Market Square, etc., when sometimes those slippages are due to a failure to sort of understand some of the issues surrounding the sites. But I am concerned about the impact of delays in the delivery of HRA housing on a temporary housing budget, and also of the capital funding for children's homes capacity, because the last council did agree to additional borrowing to try and lower our unit costs on delivery of in-house accommodation for some of our looked after children, which would reduce pressures on our revenue budget in terms of the Children's Trust budget. So I really do ask that we do try and really focus in on some of these projects that will ease the pressures on our revenue budget by delivery of on-time projects.
Thanks, Councillor Holland-Delamere. And second, Councillor Harris.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've got 3 specific questions, if I may. You have clarified the first one, which is the 475, clearly relates to budget proposals. So I assume we're therefore very confident on lead times for the equipment, given that I'm sure we won't be placing any orders until the full consultation has taken place and a full decision has been made on the future of car parking charges on the 26th of February. So let's hope it can be turned around and installed in time to meet your deadlines. I have a specific question relating to one project that's identified. It's in my ward, Boniface House. It's on page 85 of the listed capital projects. This is one of those examples. Councillor Holland-Delamere has just talked about the opportunity still that sits around children's accommodation. This was a care home that's been earmarked for repurposing, and its use has been identified for children's accommodation, I think for specific groups. But my question is, it only shows 48,500 capital for this year, nothing for the next 4 years. I know that building pretty well. I know its location and I know its state. And I'd be very surprised if £48,500 is going to touch the sides in terms of bringing it up to any sort of standard. So it's a query really as to why so little for a building that could add to our service costs, but it seems extremely low. My last question, I have asked this question before, perhaps in different forms, but I know the last time I asked the question around capital assets, there are some assets that have been identified or earmarked for potential sale, and I noticed there are a few of those on the agenda item tonight. But the question that I have asked in several forms several times is, what is our revenue costs associated with looking after any of those assets that we have yet to dispose of, that we are intending to dispose of? So for instance, security or any other costs, that seems to be quite a difficult number to arrive at, but I will ask it again in the hope that we can get a sense of what are we spending from our revenue budget to service and look after those buildings that are on the asset register for disposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. To any members of the Cabinet to comment on that before we go to officers? I think Stuart might be able to assist on the purchase of property. If you could, and Martin as well. So either or.
Chair, if I start and then hand to Stuart just in terms of a bit more detail. Again, going back to Councillor Holland Delamare's point about the temporary accommodation acquisition budget. So as you rightly identified, we've got £10 million sitting there. We're waiting for the business cases to come forward. And when the business case is made, that if we invest in that money, it will give us financial savings and better service provision. That's when we release those funds. So we're in the process of working those business cases up. And that applies for the children's placement properties as well. So we have a just below £20 million capital budget available for those investor save schemes as well. And again, as those schemes come forward, we'll make sure we pick them up. And if it stacks up financially and if it improves service provision, then we'll support those, release those funds at that point in time. I think in terms of where we are in temporary accommodation in children's homes, I can probably defer to Stuart, who can give you a bit more detail in relation to those particular business cases and where they are.
Yeah, thank you. In terms of the Children's Trust, we've been working closely with the Children's Trust in firstly identifying all of the needs and the assets that are required to maximise the opportunity that we've got, and that £20 million has been identified as a pipeline to facilitate that. We were given that money probably, was it 12 months ago-ish, in terms of this time last year. I can report that we have in every identified area got now a project that has been worked up in feasibility for every single asset or opportunity that has been seen. So I think that's great progress in 12 months that Children's Trust have identified all of the needs, and that covers care leavers, it covers children's homes, etc., etc., etc. And we now have a solution for each and every one of those as we move forward. Those are obviously subject to planning, they're subject to other aspects as well in terms of design, etc. So again, that is where we're at with the children's. So really good progress in terms of what is the need, what is the opportunity, and how do we meet that? We just now need to start that process of getting them on site and built. So again, more happy to share that information with members if that's helpful. In terms of the relocatable TA, again, we are waiting the outcome of planning decision in January. As soon as that planning is in place, then you will see most of that money will be spent almost immediately because of the nature of the accommodation that we're purchasing, etc. So again, that has a particular milestone, if you like, that will trigger the spend in those regards. We are looking and working with the private sector in other purchases for temporary accommodation. And again, we're making some good strides into identifying appropriate housing in the appropriate areas for the right price as well, because obviously that's something we've got to keep an eye on. And again, hopefully, as we go forward in the next few months, you'll start to see a few more of those starting to appear as well. But the market is quite difficult for the purchase side, probably more than we imagined when we set off. But hopefully that provides the information. If I may come back to Councillor Harris's questions. In particular, you mentioned the one development and the property. I'd like to go back, if I'm honest. First time I've heard that question, so rather than give you what I think is the answer, I'm in the office tomorrow, so again, I'll contact you and we'll get time set up. Equally, with your question in terms of security, obviously we've got many contracts, and it is sometimes difficult to go, what about that property? How much does that cost? But again, happy to work with you to make sure you get the best answer to that question. So again, I'll contact Councillor Harris tomorrow if that's okay with Cabinet to again hopefully get the answers he's asked for then. Perfect.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you, Martin. So any comments from the floor from Cabinet members? I'll turn back to John and, if necessary, James.
No, I think the officers have covered that degree of scrutiny that we're looking at tonight. So thank you for their doing that. So no, that's it. Thank you, Chair.
So if there's nothing else to add, I'll need to take a proposal from the floor. We'll take this to a vote. Councillor Stansfield, seconded Councillor Butler, and a vote with a show of hands, please, members. Thank you. That's passed. Okay. Now on to item number 9, tonight's agenda, the 26-27 draft budget and medium-term financial plan. So 4 public speakers and I think 10 members to speak from around the chamber, and Councillor Slope to introduce the report. I know there's a lot of detail in this, so we'll stay focused. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to present to Cabinet today our draft budget for 26-27 and medium-term financial plan through to 2030-31. This is arguably one of the most challenging budget setting processes the Council has faced since its formation. I want to thank officers, particularly James Smith and Louise Gatehouse, for their exceptional work in preparing these proposals. Cabinet's role today is to approve this for consultation. The 6-week consultation gives residents, businesses and all councillors, including opposition, the opportunity to provide detailed feedback. Budget scrutiny will examine this thoroughly. During this time, we will also reflect on any change in the financial circumstances. We'll return to Cabinet on the 11th of February to consider all feedback before Council makes the final decision on the 26th of February. I welcome questions on the principle and strategies of the budget. Detailed technical matters are precisely what consultation and scrutiny processes exist for. The challenges we face, let me be frank about the context in which we're operating. Nationally, councils are facing a perfect storm. Demand for statutory services is rising at unprecedented rates. Adult social care, children's services, SEND provision, temporary accommodation, all are experiencing sharp increases that show no sign of abating. This isn't unique to West Northants, it's the reality across local government. Here in West Northants, we've seen adult social care clients increase by 6% this year alone. Nursing care placements are up by more than 20%. Our Children's Trust contract is seeing significant increases to address rising placement costs and the complex needs of our children in care. Home to school transport now costs £25 million annually. These aren't discretionary services we can choose to reduce. These are legal duties to the most vulnerable people in our communities. And we're managing this whilst navigating the biggest shake-up of local government funding in over a decade. The Fair Funding Review, which will fundamentally change how every penny of government grant is allocated, whilst the Fair Funding Review has been released, officers are still working through the detail and cannot at this stage confirm 100% certainty what the position is. Officers will update members when the outcome is known. To put it simply, we're asking to set a budget without knowing for sure what the funding will be. Despite this, we're setting a balanced budget. These extraordinary challenges, what we're presenting today is a balanced, robust budget of £458.9 million that protects frontline services and invests in our residents' future. This has required some difficult decisions that every member of this cabinet has been involved in through our STI chambers processes, budget clinics, and comprehensive discussions with officers. This is a truly collective cabinet budget. The numbers behind the proposals, let me take you through the key elements. First, the growth. We're investing 64.2 million in additional base budget growth. This reflects the real world pressures I've outlined, the increasing demand, the increasing complexity, and yes, the increasing costs of providing care to those who need it most. Within this, the Children's Trust represents a substantial investment. A total contract sum of 208.2 million has been agreed for 26-27, comprising a core contract sum of 202.6 million, reflecting a net year increase of 22.3 million across the county from the current year, plus time-limited transformation projects of 5.6 million. This is indicative of the national picture of rising costs in children's social care, particularly placement demand and addressing complex needs of children in care. Now, I would note that whilst the total contract sum has been agreed, two of the councils that between the two councils and the trust, how that sum will be split between West Northants and North Northants for 26-27 is still subject to ongoing dialogue. But let's be clear, this investment is delivering results. Ofsted's recent visit praised the tangible progress being made. We're on an improvement journey, and that requires sustained investment. Adult social care of £9 million reflects an undeniable reality. People are living longer, often with more complex conditions, and they're accessing care later in life when their needs are more acute. We cannot and will not turn our backs on these residents. Second, the efficiencies. We're not simply throwing money at problems. This budget includes 32.1 million of efficiencies and income generation measures. These aren't easy wins. They're the result of line-by-line scrutiny of every service budget. They include 6.4 million reduction in our pension contributions rate because we've managed the fund well. They include 4.4 million from optimising adult social care income. They include bringing a PFI contract back in-house, saving 1.8 million annually. Every directorate has contributed. Every cabinet member has worked with their teams to identify savings that don't compromise service quality. Third is the transformation. We're investing 12.5 million in transformational projects funded through flexible use of capital receipts, because we know that standing still is not an option. We must transform how we deliver services, and if we're to manage future demand sustainability. Council tax, that's a difficult decision, and it probably attracts the most attention. We're proposing an increase of 4.99%. That's 2.99% core council tax, and the full 2% adult social care precept. For an average Band D property, that's £93.16 a year, or £1.79 a week. Why the full increase? Because even with 32.1 million of efficiencies, even with every available savings identified, the scale of demand and growth requires additional resources. Government funding, even with the fair funding reforms, is not keeping pace with the reality of service delivery costs. Some will say that we should cut services instead, but colleagues, we've already identified every efficiency we can. What services should we cut? We have a statutory and moral responsibility to support the people who need our help the most, and therefore we cannot and will not reduce support for elderly residents in nursing care, provide less support for children in care, or reduce SEND provision. This council tax decision means an average Band D household will pay £37.70 a week for all West Northampton Council services, everything from bin collections to social care, from maintaining roads to supporting the homeless. That represents, in my view, value that residents expect and deserve. Moving on to building for the future, our capital investment programme. Now, I anticipate some will ask, if money is so tight, why are you still investing in capital projects? This is a crucial question, and it deserves a straight answer. Capital funding works fundamentally differently from revenue funding. Just as a household cannot pay its bills from grocery bills from a mortgage, the council cannot use capital funds to cover the cost of most daily operations, like social care, waste collection, or street lighting. Generally, capital funding can only be used for one-off projects: building schools, repairing roads, generating town centres, improving public facilities. Much of this funding comes from specific government grants or other sources that legally have to be used for capital projects. We cannot divert it to pay for day-to-day services, no matter how much we might wish to. So while we must manage our revenue budget carefully and make difficult decisions about council tax efficiencies, we have a duty to continue building for the future. That's why we're promising a capital programme of £83 million for the 26-27 part of a £143 million investment spanning through to 2030-31. This isn't profligacy. This is about ensuring West Northamptonshire has the infrastructure, facilities and service it needs for the long term. Let me give you some specifics about where those investments will go. 26 million over 5 years for adult social care, supporting independent living through home adaptations, equipment and assistive technology that keeps people in their own homes for longer. £18 million next year for assets and environment, modernising buildings, improving environmental resilience and delivering facilities our communities need. £9 million next year for town centre regeneration projects like the Mayfair Heritage Gateway and Abington Street redevelopments that will revitalise our town centre and create vibrant public spaces. £8 million for next year for highways and waste, maintaining roads, improving safety and supporting cleaner, more sustainable transport. £5 million for next year for education, increasing school places, improving SEND provision for local families. £2 million for housing and communities, supporting disabled facilities, libraries and community services. These investments are about improving everyday life for residents. They're about creating opportunities, supporting growth and ensuring West Northamptonshire remains a great place to live, work and visit. And they're being delivered while we manage the day-to-day budget pressures I've outlined. That's responsible financial management, protecting today's services while investing in tomorrow's infrastructure. How we manage uncertainty. I've managed earlier the uncertainty around fair funding. Let me explain how we've managed the risk. We've worked with independent specialists to model multiple scenarios. We've applied prudent, conservative assumptions. We've stress tested our figures, and we've maintained a £7 million general contingency to manage risk as they emerge. When the provisional settlement has been fully digested and analysed, we'll know whether our assumptions have been accurate, and they generally show that they will be at the moment. Any changes will be reflected in the final budget, and we bring that back to Cabinet on the 16th of February. Our current modelling suggests an estimated increase in funding of 15.4 million compared to our original budget assumptions for 26-27. But I'm confident, Chair, that we've taken the right approach, building a budget on solid foundations rather than hoping for the best. The medium term. Looking beyond 26-27, our medium-term financial plan shows a cumulative gap of 50.3 million over 4 years. That's a gap of 3% in 27-28, reducing to 2% by 2030-31. The incremental position, which assumes we close each year's gap, as we've successfully done with since WNC's formation, shows a more manageable 12.8 million challenge in 27-28. This is that challenging? Yes. Yes. Is it manageable? Absolutely. If we maintain our discipline, continue transforming services, and make evidence-based decisions about priorities. The alternative, the cumulative scenario, where we do nothing each year, would see us exhaust the general fund balances by 29-30, and that's simply not an option Cabinet will entertain. Schools and children, a word on schools funding and SEND. The estimated DSG allocation of 552 million represents a 2.6% increase. However, colleagues, we will be aware that our high needs blocks deficit now stands at 65 million cumulatively, with a forecast in-year overspend of 36.8 million. Now, there is some positive news here. After years of advocacy led by County Councils Network and supported by councils like ours, government has finally committed to working some responsibility for SEND funding from 28 to 29 onwards. The statutory override protects our general fund until then, and the future deficit will be managed centrally through the Department of Education budget. This is progress. It indicates that SEND demand growth won't fall on council taxpayers indefinitely. However, I need to be transparent about this. We still lack clarity, as I've mentioned before, what happens to the 65 million of historic deficit that's already been accumulated. Nationally, that figure would reach 14 to 18 billion by 2028. Will these deficits be written off, capitalised into borrowing, funded gradually? We simply don't know yet. The education white paper, delayed from November to the new year, should provide more detail. Our Section 151 officer and I are monitoring this closely. The risk is material but manageable. Government recognises the problem and is taking action. We're not in crisis territory, but we need clarity on the resolution plan. We continue to advocate through CCN and directly with governments for a fair and sustainable solution that protects both our children's services and our financial stability. So what happens next? Today, we're approving this draft budget for consultation. From tomorrow, residents, businesses, partners and stakeholders will have 6 weeks to review our proposals and provide feedback. We will listen, genuinely listen. If there are alternative approaches that achieve the same outcomes, we will consider them. The Place and Resources Overview and Scrutiny Committee will scrutinise these proposals in January. Their input will be invaluable, and I welcome their challenge. We return to Cabinet on the 16th of February with the final budget incorporating consultation feedback, scrutiny comments, and crucially, the confirmed provisional settlement figures. Then back to full council on the 26th of February for a final decision. So in conclusion, Chair, this is a budget that balances competing pressures with financial responsibility. It protects the vulnerable while driving efficiency. It invests in prevention while maintaining immediate demand. It maintains services while preparing for future challenges, and it continues to build the infrastructure and facilities our communities need for the future. It's not perfect. No budget in the current climate can be, but it's balanced, it's prudent, and it's deliverable. Most importantly, it keeps faith with the residents who elected us to make the most difficult decisions on their behalf. We've seen the dedication of officers who've worked weekends and evenings to build the budget. I've witnessed the commitments of Cabinet colleagues who've challenged assumptions and questioned every line. And I've felt the weight of responsibility we all carry to get this right. Today, I believe we have, and I commend this draft budget to Cabinet and recommend it for approval for consultation. Thank you, Chair. I formally move the recommendations set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Slope. That was indeed detailed. Before we go to speakers, I mean, there's been a huge amount of content on this, not least in the press, local radio, politics shows and the like. And I think most of the points of view we're about to hear on the public record tonight have already been heard. Not least opposition narrative. But I think there's some striking points we've got to take from this. The West Northampton Council, as it started in 2021, was saddled with debt from the outset. It feels the burden of that every day. And we're spending over £50,000 a day of taxpayers' money paying interest. And then we're struggling to deliver our day-to-day services. So, or rather we're not, but they come at a price to the electorate. The only dials we have to turn are the things where we start looking at fees and charges, rather than going on blanket increase. Or indeed, someone contacted me this morning and said, have you ever considered going at council tax at higher percentages? We're seeing councils in extreme financial hardship around the country going above 6%. I think Birmingham 7.5%, Worcester indeed under Reform UK struggling at 10%. And the simple reason for that is not increasing council tax base over substantial periods. Indeed, we saw that in the county. There is consistency though, and that is with the Conservative Party, but we'll hear their points this evening, I'm sure. Indeed, when it comes to the point of lobbying for fair funding, I said this morning that I spoke to all 4 of the MPs that represent West Northamptonshire and asked for support in putting our argument on the public record in Parliament. We didn't get it. And, for different reasons, we now see petitions cited as the alternatives to fees and charges. We have a shared electorate in West Northamptonshire, down from parishes and upwards to Parliament, and we must work together. So this administration and this council is keen on doing that, and that needs to go on the record in the minutes this evening. I'll go to speakers, and I'll start with the member for South Northamptonshire, Sarah Ball MP. Sarah, I think the microphone might work first time.
Thank you very much, Chair. So let me start with a quote from the leader of Reform's election literature. It says, "They will improve scrutiny, help cut council waste, and most importantly, challenge how your money is spent." But forgive me, with this proposed budget, the only challenge is to residents' money. Higher taxes, higher charges, and for the first time, parking charges in Towcester and potentially in Brackley in the future too. Now, the House of Lords in May this year published a paper on high streets explaining how they faced several significant challenges in recent years, including the rise of online shopping, the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the effect of inflationary pressures in changing consumer behaviour, rising operational costs, and competition from out-of-town shopping centres. Against this backdrop, let us consider the impact of the parking charges for Towcester. Firstly, to the high street shops. So not all councillors may be aware, but alongside our established businesses, we've had new entrants onto our high street, including Slow Life and the Old Bakery. But every single business on that high street is really worried about their viability going forward. In a market town, the key offering is the ability to drop in, to grab a coffee after walking your dog, to pop into the post office and then run a few errands, or even to have a drink or a dinner at one of our fine hospitality venues. And parking charges disincentivises that behaviour. Existing businesses like J&A and Tove Accountancy are trying now to consider measures to pay for themselves for the parking. But if a business, for example, tried to cover the costs of the annual pass at £1,425.60 for each employee that they have, it would actually, with taxes, cost them £2,000 for each employee. Something that I'm sure you'll agree few businesses can absorb at this time. Think of the impact of these parking charges also on the charity shops. Willen Hospice charity shop has 24 volunteers who work 4-hour shifts. For a shop that opens 6 days a week at £4.40 or £4.90 with an extra half an hour a shift, it will disincentivise helpers who already generously give their time. Has the council also considered local residents who live in the properties without parking, who rely on the existing provision? They can ill afford, especially with the council tax rises, to take on the extra cost. Now, the council say that they're not predetermining, but I note that they have already allocated nearly £500,000 to ANPR. But I really want to understand what the reality it will be for the actual costs to install and to operate the machines. And if this money is then taken away because this option isn't taken, the public will see straight through that. So please do not claim that that would be a saving. I'd also like to know how these parking machines are going to operate. Will they be by cards, and particularly will they be requiring a phone app? Because we know that mobile phone signal in Towcester is a problem, and that is going to cause further challenges. And furthermore, in an attempt to avoid the charges, I'm sure we may see that residential streets may become the new parking spaces when we'll be clogging up the side roads. This Reform Council should be doing all they can to support high streets, especially with Labour's assault on businesses and their budgets. Towcester was granted a market charter in 1194, and from this day became an important market town which has thrived. But this is now at grave risk. Over 2,000 people have signed my petition to date. Their message is clear: scrap this plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker I have down is Dawn Brannigan. Dawn, are you speaking as a town councillor from Daventry or a retailer? Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to address the Cabinet. Although I'm speaking particularly about Daventry, I think all these comments are also relevant to both Brackley and Towcester. I'm an independent retailer. I've traded on Daventry High Street for the best part of 26 years. And so far, Daventry has largely managed to buck the trend of the death of the high street. And it's largely due to small independent retailers, cafes, service providers, and market traders who rely heavily on regular footfall and short, convenient visits by customers. Parking availability and affordability are critical factors in enabling these visits and keeping these businesses alive. The introduction of parking charges would effectively sound the death knell for Daventry, where a high proportion of shoppers arrive by car due to the town's modular nature and limited public transport. Many of Daventry's regular shoppers are from towns and villages that are roughly equidistant to larger towns, some of which are out of the county, like Rugby, Leamington, Banbury and Northampton. They prefer to shop in Daventry due to its ease of access and free car parking. We've got a petition in the shop, and currently, of the signatures that we've collected, virtually 50% of people are from outside of Daventry. Independent retailers are especially vulnerable as they operate on extremely tight margins and depend on frequent visits from local customers. If shoppers perceive visiting Daventry as inconvenient or costly, they are most likely to consolidate trips elsewhere, particularly to out-of-town shopping centres with free parking. The loss of top-up convenience trade will have a disproportionate impact, leading to reduced turnover, shop closures, and ultimately a decline in the attractiveness of the town centre as a whole. Parking charges fall most heavily on those already struggling: the elderly, people with disabilities and their carers, families with young children. These groups are the most loyal and frequent users of Daventry town centre shops and services. Introducing charges would undoubtedly exclude them from regular participation in town centre life. Independent businesses and cafes provide a social service to the community, building friendships and reducing isolation. They are the reliable and accessible beating heart of the local community. Workers in town centre shops, most of whom are on minimum wage, would be forced to shell out around £2,000 a year just for the privilege of going to work. Now, if you're on minimum wage, that's effectively you're going to work for 6 weeks a year just to go to work, to pay the parking. Daventry town centre is highly residential. The introduction of parking charges will increase demand on the supermarket's free car parks and put untold pressure on surrounding residential streets. The incidence of parking rage will spiral. We've already, within the last fortnight, seen an incident in Tesco's car park where a woman was grabbed by the hair and the assailant attempted to gouge her eyes out over a parking space. These charges won't just affect shoppers, it's the whole of society. Parents dropping off and collecting their children at schools and nurseries within the town centre, gym users, we've got 3 gyms. I'm pretty sure we'll only have 1 by the end of it. Cinema goers, church goers, and ultimately West Northants Council themselves, when businesses such as the Arc Cinema and Daventry Sports Centre will be forced to close, resulting in a loss of revenue for West Northants. If these charges are introduced, will the last person on the high street please turn off the lights? Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Next speaker is Councillor Martin Johns of Towcester Town Council.
Councillors, I'm here with an open letter signed by 78 local businesses and charities, all who operate in the heart of Towcester's town centre. Their message is loud and clear. Your draft budget, including parking charges, is an extra tax our small town simply cannot afford. Last week, I talked face-to-face with all those businesses and charities. Across the board, I heard the same story. Deep anxiety about the damaging impact of your proposals. They're worried for their own livelihoods. They're anxious about the damaging impact of your proposals. They're worried for their livelihoods, their staff, and the very future of our town centre. Our local traders are already struggling to keep their doors open in a challenging climate. In a small market town, we need every advantage to bring people in. Free parking is vital. Charging for it will drive business away. If one shop closes, it hurts the whole town. Margins are really wafer thin. Any drop in visitors could force businesses to close. One pop-up shop owner told me they hope to become permanent, but with these parking charges looming, they're now seriously reconsidering. Retail staff shared their fears. For many, paying to park will mean they'll be better off on benefits. Low wages are the norm in retail. Most owners take a very modest wage themselves. Staff travelling from neighbouring villages simply can't rely on public transport, unlike places in Northampton or Milton Keynes. As has been said earlier, our charity shops, including Willing Hospice, depend on volunteers who must drive in. Are we really going to make people pay for the privilege of volunteering? Your proposals fail to grasp the essence of market towns, like Towcester. We don't have public transport links like bigger towns, or flagship stores, but we do have to compete with them. If you remove free parking, you take away our edge. Frankly, this new tax on parking has blindsided Towcester. It's come right at a time when the town was looking forward to the National Highways Improvement Scheme. Giving with one hand and taking away with the other. Councillors, our community is counting on you to keep Towcester vibrant and thriving. Scrap this parking tax. We're not asking for millions like your projects in Northampton. We're asking for you to protect the one clear advantage our market town still has: free parking. That's what helps bring people in to shop, to use services, to enjoy recreation like on the water meadows. Please keep Towcester a town people want to and can afford to visit. I thank you for listening to Towcester's concerns, and I wish you all a very Merry Christmas. I will now pass the Leader of the Council the letter, and those are all signatures. I've spoken to everyone myself.
Thank you, Councillor Johns. That's up to the monitoring officer for recording. Thank you. And there's one more speaker Noted here, the Right Honourable Stuart Andrew, MP for Daventry.
Thank you very much. I will, of course, respond more formally to the consultation, but this evening I am speaking on behalf of the many shops, bars, restaurants, businesses, charities, and the 6,500 people who in a week have already signed the petition against introducing car parking charges in Daventry. For many of these businesses, times are really quite challenging at the moment. They are seeing increased taxes and overheads, including more expensive business rates and energy bills that are putting real pressure on their profitability. Even before this proposal was published, most, if not all, were telling me that they are really worried about their future. The one thing that has always made Daventry a good place for these businesses is the ability of customers to be able to park free of charge. This is particularly necessary given the significant competition that exists in other towns, such as Northampton, Rugby and Banbury and so on. In the residents' comments that have been collected as part of the petition, time and time again, they cite the fact that the free parking enables them not just to shop for the essentials that they were taking the trip for, but also at the same time to spend a bit more time in the town, maybe to pop into a cafe for a coffee or enjoy some of the other facilities in the town without fear of their parking overrunning, showing significant support to the local economy. As we've already heard, charities are also extremely concerned and anxious about these proposals. For charity shops that exist to raise significant funding for some of the most extremely important causes in our county, they rely on volunteers who may be dissuaded from continuing to give of their time if it's going to cost too much. And I know how difficult it is to recruit volunteers as it is at the moment. In addition, charities like Mind have contacted me to say they are worried about the impact this will have on their clients that they are seeking to help and offer support to at their centre, and are particularly concerned about the inclusion to charge blue badge holders. It also needs to be remembered that the town centre doesn't just serve the people of Daventry. There are countless villages in the rural areas that depend on the shops in the town for their shopping. They do not have the luxury of regular, reliable public transport to use as an alternative, and therefore will be hindered if these changes and charges are introduced, which will be seen as yet another hurdle for our rural communities to navigate. And equally, I've been contacted by people who are employed in the town, who are now worried about the cost of parking and what that would mean for their household income. The increase in their annual expenses would be significant, particularly given the annual rate for parking will be increasing too. And those people are desperate to carry on working, but they have to think about the impact on their household budgets. I've always believed that we should do everything we can to make work pay. Business groups and the Town Council in Daventry do an excellent job to attract people to the town, whether that be through events or showcasing various businesses. But the introduction of these charges would negate much of that work for which they should be commended and supported. And as I suspect, we will see a drop in footfall in the high street. And I worry, therefore, about the viability of those businesses. And that prospect may see them closing and losing income for the council through lack of business rates. Given that parking income also, when you look at the individual car parks, is not that significant, it seems a retrograde step for very little in return. And other residents have also raised concern about displaced parking and how much will those traffic management projects that will need to be introduced again cost the council. So in conclusion, towns like Daventry are doing all they can to offer a variety of businesses, shops and restaurants. We've been fortunate to see new ones open up too in recent years, and they do so against a difficult background, a difficult, challenging economic background, and we should all do what we can to support them. And I'd urge the council to rule out these charges now so they can concentrate on building up their custom in these last few days before Christmas.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so we have a long list of members tonight, so try and stick to time. Thank you for all the public speakers and those who made the effort to come over. Councillor Lister, you're number one.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by saying this budget is a betrayal of everything this administration promised. 7 months ago, residents were told they were going to get tax cuts and efficiency. Instead, you're delivering a classic tax and spend package that hammers families from every direction. You're even boasting that this will be the most responded to consultation in our council's history. It won't be because you've listened, but because these proposals are so damaging that residents will respond in their thousands to fight back. Council tax up, social rents up, green waste fees up by a third. Bulky waste charges, what used to cover 3 items for £31, now includes a new £20 charge just to take away a single sofa. Even the rats haven't escaped the claws of the administration, with pest control fees jumping by over 50%. They say they're exploring charges on discretionary services like car parking and garden waste, as if these were simply lifestyle choices. But for many rural residents, there is nothing discretionary about it. In villages with little or no public transport, the car is not a luxury. It's the only way to get to work, to shops, to the GP. We protected free car parking in our market towns and committed to doing so. Yet here you are introducing new parking charges in Daventry and Towcester, and almost certainly Brackley if you get your way, and even charging £3 to park for a Sunday park run in Brixworth Country Park. Disabled blue badge holders, they haven't escaped either and will also be paying the same parking charges as everybody else. Are these parking charges really, though, just a political smokescreen? The noisy measures this administration can row back on later and claim they have listened, while the big decisions, the council tax rise, the green bin hike, the broken promises, they're all baked in and here to stay. But let me be clear, right now, a future Conservative administration will scrap any of these damaging parking charges you put in now that hurt our market towns and our rural communities. Where are the efficiencies? Where are the savings? Local government funding was no secret. This authority published its budget every year. Now you're asking all members to give you ideas to balance the budget. 7 months and you're already out of ideas. Let me remind you, we balanced it for 4 years without introducing parking charges. Yet instead of delivering what you promised, you're forecasting an overspend of £10.5 million this year, even after raiding every penny of the £11.4 million general contingency that we put aside to protect services. That contingency now drops to £7 million next year. Reserves we left at around £17 million and forecast to fall to £5.7 million, while external borrowing is expected to increase to £832 million by the end of March. You also question the pension fund. Now that fund delivers a £6.4 million saving, and you're banking the lot and still pressing ahead with high council tax, high rent, high parking, high waste charges. This is a budget that taxes necessity. It drains the contingency and the reserves we put in place. It piles up our debt to over £800 million. This is not what would be promised. I would say, with the last person left with any money after this budget to switch the lights out, but you're also turning off those in this budget too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lister. Councillor Irving-Swift.
I will give you a respite about the car park charges because I agree with all what was said before. So after 6 months in power, reality is biting. On a video, Councillor Arnaud is asking for residents to give their feedback about the budget. Well, you have here tonight, you had an idea of the feedback. But what about being a leader? In the last 6 months, you have, having told the electorate how you will finance efficiency, period 7 I discussed a few moments ago, is a prime example of how you have performed so far. Now you publish a budget late, and we are all tonight, on the 22nd of December, all my friends are asking, why are you doing that? Just 3 days before Christmas? I asked myself the same question because we never did it. So I will just highlight one thing, the pension. Well, you say it's a saving. I will come back to that later. But that is not your success. It's our success. It's a Conservative success. For 5 years, we grafted. We made no headline. It was just bit by bit with officers, with the help of the officer, and very good pension department. So we grafted. We might not have everything right, but for pension, we did. We gave you next year a gift of 6.5 million in cash for your budget and you are having a little bit, you want more with the parking charges. That is pathetic. And let me be clear, that is not a saving. You put it as a saving in your administration. You did nothing for it. It was a gift from us. And more, for the foreseeable future, it's another gift of 6.4 million or 5. So in the next 5 years, we will have given you 6.5 million this year, plus 20 million for the year to come. We are very generous with you. I don't know why. And more, I don't have very much more to say. I'm just flabbergasted at your budget. And I am going to wait for your proposal because you are going to listen to everybody. And I am looking forward to the final budget because tonight we are all wanted to go home. And thank you for everybody who came to speak about the silliness of your planning, your car parking charge. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bignell, you're next.
Yes, good evening. Reform were elected earlier this year with promises of reducing taxes, cutting waste and increasing efficiency as laid out in their campaign leaflets, which we all had through our door. Congratulations. With this budget, you have spectacularly failed at your first attempt to fulfil your pledges to the electorate who voted you in. Firstly, car parking charges. Under the Conservative leadership of the 4 previous years, we refused to accept charges in Towcester, Daventry and Brackley, but at the first opportunity, Reform introduces them. I understand the financial pressures facing the council, and I'm not opposed to sensible reform. However, introducing parking charges in these towns risks doing real economic harm while delivering uncertain financial benefits. These towns are not regional shopping destinations. They survive on frequent, short visits. Charging for parking reduces footfall, and once footfall drops, businesses close. That loss is permanent. Once the town centre declines, reversing its costs far more than any parking income ever raises. Charging doesn't stop people driving, it changes where they drive to. Residents will simply choose retail parks, supermarkets or neighbouring areas where parking is free. Parking income is often overestimated. Once enforcement, administration and reduced usage are factored in, many councils find the net return is far lower than predicted. Officers working here in a forum will have to pay to park. And again, the reform promise was of getting more officers back to work. Well, they won't there because they won't stay at home rather than pay the charges. Increased bin charges. First, an £80 charge risks discouraging participation in green waste recycling. Residents who currently do the right thing may simply opt out. That green waste does not disappear. It is far more likely to end up in black bins, increased landfill costs, and undermining environmental goals the council is legally and morally committed to. With inflation running at 3% and wage increases near the same, a 33% increase is totally unaffordable, as well as being at the top end nationally, where the average is £60. Good environmental behaviour should be encouraged, not priced out of reach. And lastly, the council tax rise. This is not an abstract 5% on a spreadsheet. For many households in West Northamptonshire, it's another unavoidable bill on top of higher food costs, energy, insurance, rents, etc. Council tax is regressive. It hits those least able to pay the hardest. How many residents will receive a 5% income rise next year? Residents are being asked to pay more when services feel thinner, bins cost extra, parking costs more, and a basic interaction with the council feel harder, not better. At a time when trust in local government is fragile, repeatedly turning to council tax sends the message that residents are the default solution to financial pressure. Where are our Doge friends? Who would I quote, stop wasted council taxes and put an end to mismanagement? The Conservatives ran such a good council for 4 years, they found none of these, and we balanced our budgets each year. So for those reasons, I cannot support these rises. Our residents deserve a council that looks inward for solutions, delivers what they promised before reaching into the residents' pockets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bignell. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Chairman. Much of what has been said already, obviously I agree with all the comments that my colleagues at the back here have made. This is a time when residents are really under pressure with their finances. We see that by the 91 people who came to Brackley's Community Larder last Friday to buy cheap food, because the price of everything has gone up across the board. Utilities, food, bills rising all the time. So I agree with all the comments already made about the parking charges. But I'd also like to address the green waste issue. We had a very good take-up of green waste in the last administration, which was very good. But I think that was actually the limit of the amount of money that people will pay. I was at Brackley Town Mayor's Tea Party on Friday afternoon, where 23 people came up to my table and told me they would not be continuing with their payment for the green bin in the future. They'd put it in a black bag and put it in the black bin. So I want to encourage residents' responsibility to recycle the garden waste. This exorbitant rise will ensure that this will not happen. And composting, as I've been told by many residents, their plan is to bag it and place it in the back bin, as I've said. I think according to the feelings that there will be a very reduced number of sign-offs if this goes ahead. It will drop substantially in the future. Looking at other councils, I can see that this charge of £80 will add West North Hants Council to the top 10 in charging for green waste. I am sure that your administration would like our West North Hants Council to be in the top 10 for a really good reason, and not because they are the highest rate of green waste charges. This is too much for our residents to pay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Councillor Chauhan.
Good evening. Today I'm speaking on behalf of residents who were promised one thing and are now being delivered the opposite. This Christmas, residents are about to receive a double whammy: a rise from taxes from Labour and a rise of taxes from Reform. May I remind you that you actually campaigned on cutting taxes for residents during your election, and these were promises that you made directly to them. The previous Conservative administration set balanced budgets year on year. We made 115 million of efficiency savings and delivered 4 years of a balanced budget. In May 2025, Reform took control of West North Hants and promised residents lower taxes and a new approach to council finances. Yet in the first year of your first budget, the Reform administration have broken their pledge not to raise taxes and are proposing a 4.99% council tax increase. So let's be absolutely clear what this means for residents. It means that everyone will be paying higher bills during a very difficult time and a cost of living crisis. It also means that the very first budget from this administration breaks a central promise made to voters. This budget also confirms that demand-led services like adult social care and children's services are overspending by tens of millions of pounds. These are pressures that the previous administration were also dealing with, but we still managed to deliver a balanced budget. Saving plans are already slipping, with over 2 million identified and likely to be delivered, and reserves and contingencies are being used to paper over structural pressures rather than fix them. So residents are paying more while our financial risks are growing and not shrinking. And my question to the leader is, you promised to cut taxes, stop the boats, cut waste. Have any of these been achieved? It is not what the residents were promised. If taxes must rise, say so. But do not make promises to lower taxes and then deliver the biggest possible increase. Residents deserve better than broken promises.
Sorry, thank you, Councillor Chauhan. Councillor Keeble, I've got yourself and Councillor Delamere. It's yourself. Yep, no problem.
I have to say it's really disappointing to see that Reform is using the old approach to setting council budgets, which is to say what the demand is, roll forward the previous year's budget, and then call the difference cuts. With the mandate, the sweeping mandate that Reform had for change, with the fair funding that it's received, with its Doge initiative as well, which has been mentioned, and its commitment to cut taxes, I would have expected them to come up with something different, with a more transformational approach. And I would also not have expected the administration to keep with the Conservative policy framework, which we also as a party obviously disagreed with. There are three areas that I particularly want to focus on. One is where we need more information in drawing up our own proposals. One is to flag up some of the detailed cuts, and the third is to say what's missing. In the areas that are needed, in relation to the mansion tax, how much does it raise in West Northants, and can we use it locally? In terms of contract inflation, you've said that I would have expected the contract figures to have included inflation unless the service is being recontracted, and please could you say that? With the Children's Trust, you have a number of costs that you say have been capitalised. Is this true of all the transformation costs? And the same in other services, paragraph 135 refers. In 152, you talk about the funding assumptions, and I assume that the figures will come forward on that once they're being worked through. And on SEND, I do wonder that as the government takes over both the responsibility for funding the 65 million deficit, hopefully, and also takes on responsibilities of the services, if you've thought with their commitment to increase funding for mainstream services and mainstream schools, if you've thought through the impact, especially on places like Tiffield. Some of the detailed cuts. Closing Abington Park Museum, which is down for 2 years' time, is a massive mistake, and I think will be bitterly represented. It is our premier park in Northampton. I know it's 2 years down the line, but if it's written into the budget, these things tend to get carried forward. There's a reduction in community grants. The community groups do a huge amount to support the work throughout the whole council area, and they deserve to be supported. The parking charges, I think, have probably been talked about by everybody. I'd flag up the ones at the racecourse and the 2 hours in Castle Ward. There's a realignment of the budget for Oasis House and the neighbourhood wardens. I hope realignment does not actually mean cuts. There's the green waste has been mentioned. The introduction of the £20 charge for collection of a single item is of real concern to all of us who represent wards that have fly tipping as a problem, which I certainly do in Dallington Spencer. Finally, there's what's missing. On page 125, the cessation programme in public health, you seem to have dropped the support for new mothers who are smoking to get them to give up smoking. Elsewhere in the agenda, you've dropped that as one of your indicators. That should be an absolute key indicator. In addition, as my party has consistently raised, there needs to be a targeting of the early death rates, which are in Castle Ward, in central Northampton in particular. And I don't see that mentioned anywhere. I don't see funding for the youth strategy, either in the revenue or the capital, and I don't see any funding for the family hub for Northampton. There's a lot about the Central Library, which is a completely wrong location for a family hub in Northampton. Those last two especially are about shifting resources to tackle some of the real entrenched disadvantages in our community, to future-proof our area by investing in young people and families and making sure that everybody can share in the benefits of West Northamptonshire. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. I know everyone's frantically taking notes as we go around. We'll do our best to respond to all the points as we come up. Next speaker I have is Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take a slightly different tack, given that most of the areas in the budget have been covered, because I think it's important to think about, obviously, car parking charges in particular is a very hot topic and doesn't seem to make much sense to most of us, I have to say. But it's on the table because there are difficult choices to be made. That's the commentary that we hear from the administration. But there is a context here. And I'm afraid Conservative governments, previous Conservative governments, don't get off scot-free either. So let's join up the dots a little. Previous Conservative governments have systematically defunded local councils, with English local government spending power estimated to have fallen by around 24% in real terms over the past decade or so. That's a funding gap. Johnson promised to fix care. He didn't. Now, the Casey report is not due until 2028, the proverbial can being kicked down the road yet again on the essential issue of care. The UK's GDP is estimated to be between 6 to 8% less than it could have been, according to new analysis from the think tank National Bureau of Economic Research. Now, that indicates that leaving the EU has cost the UK up to £90 billion a year in lost tax revenues. How's that going? Add to this the cost pressures that this council continues to deal with due to the absolute car crash failure of the previous Conservative-led county council that resulted in effective bankruptcy and cuts to preventative investment measures for all of our services. We're paying the cost for that today. Furthermore, the failures of Northamptonshire's children care, including the Ofsted reported delays, complacency, and missed safeguarding opportunities. This resulted in the subsequent creation of the Children's Trust. And again, this is continuing to put pressure on this council. The commissioners brought in to run the council commented, the former leadership had developed a transformation agenda that existed in name only. And if the council at that time could be identified with one word, that word would be hubris. I suggest that this new administration, if they haven't already, acquaints themselves with the full report in detail and learn from history. Now, the Trust has overspent since its inception in the region of £95 million across North and West, 53 million in this council alone. Now, I don't blame the Trust, and I certainly do not blame the children. It has seen improvements since its creation, but the model is flawed. The fact is that the Trust is exposed to a deplorable trend where private equity firms and corporate owners are profiting from one of the UK's most vulnerable populations, children in care. Whilst these businesses rake in millions in profits, local councils, already stretched thin by austerity, are left footing the bill, and children often facing substandard care. This disturbing development raises serious questions about the morality of turning social care into a business venture, particularly when it comes to the well-being of children. But these private equity businesses fit both the Conservative and Reform UK's view of the world: small state, outsourced services, encouraging entrepreneurs, low taxes. It's not working. Councils are getting poorer, shareholders are getting richer, private equity firms are cleaning up. These are the endemic problems that need fixing. So, councillors, when you make promises like cutting taxes and call for a fairer funding regime and suggest that government is failing to provide sufficiently for local authorities, kick the tyres thoroughly first and maybe even take a look under the bonnet too. You'll do well to remember where government funding, fair or otherwise, comes from: taxes. And without it, council funding will simply get worse. Now, I suspect the reality is that 4.99% would have been applied regardless as to whoever was running the council, because there are very few choices. The difference is others didn't say they wouldn't increase it. The time has come to stop over-promising and delivering and making overly simplistic promises. Do not make promises that the coffers cannot cover. I'll wave it around because everybody else has done so this evening. All actions have consequences. Reform UK has made promises. You are breaking them. You are already breaking people's trust. Now, I do have a question. In the interest of transparency, would the administration please share the matrix that sets out the green, amber, and red ratings of all of the choices that were available and presented to you for cost savings, so that we can all see what was considered and what was dismissed? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellison. Just to come to your last question, the answer is yes, absolutely, to all members. And then we can do this process fully and transparently. Just conscious of the timings on this. Councillor Tarbon, you're next, sir.
Councillors, on behalf of Towcester residents, businesses and local charities that I represent, I'm adding my strong opposition to the proposed introduction of parking charges in our town. There are several significant additional concerns that I believe must be considered before any such decision is taken, as the consequences will truly be far-reaching, many unintended. Introducing parking charges will have a knock-on effect on displacing vehicles onto our already congested residential streets and pavements. Roads such as Brackley Road, Richmond Road, Northampton Road and Watling Street already struggle with traffic and limited parking. Adding further pressure will undoubtedly worsen the situation for those who live there. Furthermore, there is a real risk that drivers will start using private car parks, such as the Toaster Mill Brewery and the Olive Tree, without permission. This would unfairly force local businesses to pay enforcement measures, placing an additional financial burden on them at a time where they can least afford it. Also, the town centre's Sawpit Centre and Riverside Centre would likely see its car park targeted by those wishing to avoid fees elsewhere. This would compel our town council to invest in costly barriers or other enforcement measures, simply to retain parking for legitimate users of the centre. This is not a sustainable or fair solution. We must also consider what has happened elsewhere. For example, after parking charges were introduced in Buckingham, Waitrose responded by restricting parking and introducing charges of their own. If the same were to happen here, the impact on our town centre could be devastating, driving people away from our local shops and services. Our community organisations are deeply concerned as well. Churches, including St Lawrence, have expressed their worries about the adverse effects on those attending funerals, weddings, church services and other important events. It is vital that we do not make it more difficult for people to come together at times of celebration or mourning. The Tove Baptist Fellowship is also anxious about their car park being misused by those looking to avoid the charges in the adjacent long stay car park. We've already seen this happen during major events, such as the Silverstone Grand Prix, and the introduction of parking charges would only make the problem worse. Finally, introducing charges will give out-of-town shopping locations like the Bell Plantation an even greater and frankly unfair advantage over our town centre, as they offer large, free car parks. This could further undermine our local economy and community spirit. For all these reasons, I strongly urge you to reconsider the introduction of parking charges. Let us work together to find solutions that support our residents, businesses and community organisations, rather than making life more difficult for everyone here in Towcester. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Tarbon. You're very welcome. And finally, from the gallery, Councillor Tolley, before Councillor McCord at the end.
Thank you. Right, I don't want to add any more to what has already been said by my colleagues, Councillor Johns and Councillor Tarbon, and all the other speakers who have spoken so eloquently tonight about the impact and damage that this budget measure of car park charges will have on our town, for what can be seen as a very minor amount of revenue raised. There is, though, another very concerning aspect, which is the lack of consultation, there being no indication that this proposal was even on the table before the publication of the draft budget, with many key stakeholders only getting wind of it days ago. This is no small change to a market town like ours, as can be seen from the sheer number of businesses and charities in Towcester who have readily signed our open letter to Councillor Arnold. There is also a lot of concern from the Rotary Club and Farmers Market, who would have preferred to have been asked rather than told they will now have to change their business practices without so much as a nod from WNC. Take a resident and business owner in the town who sent me a message, obviously very distressed. This was the first she had heard about it. She has a small office and has 3 members of staff, 2 of whom do not live in Towcester and use the Richmond Road car park. She herself lives in the town but has to use her car for nursery drop-offs. The calculated cost for her business is over £4,000 a year. She would not expect her staff to foot the bill. I would expect to either shoulder this herself or find new offices outside of town. She's already seriously considering this option. This is just one example of what could happen, and there are, of course, many others. We must remember it is not just individual companies as well. Sue from Towcester Craft Collective hosts a monthly fair in the town hall. She has already told us that she's pretty confident her event would have to close if this measure goes through. If you put the effort into talking with the people of the town in advance, rather than moving revenue and costs around from one column to another, if you had spoken with the town centre managers in small towns like Towcester, you would realise the damaging effects your decisions could have. Towcester is not like larger towns such as Northampton, and treating it as such is part of what has gone wrong with your approach. I can see that there have been no economic or social impact assessments done on this in preparation of the draft budget, or any even suggested. We've seen how similar schemes have affected other towns like Buckingham and Leighton Buzzard, turning high streets into ghost towns, causing clear damage to the local economy, which surely no one would want to repeat. I also think as a council, we owe our independent businesses the courtesy of doing the due diligence of such planning if we are to expect them and their customers to shoulder the burden of what is in effect a parking tax. As Benjamin Franklin said, failing to prepare is preparing to fail, meaning we cannot just rush into a proposal like this for the sake of a small revenue stream, certainly without knowing the ultimate cost in the long run. Now, we know there will be a consultation coming up, but the strength of feeling against this proposal is only likely to grow as more people come to realise what this change will actually mean to them. And therefore, I urge you to reconsider, to find an alternative approach, and to stop this before it starts. No one wants a surprise like this at Christmas, and hopefully by listening to those in towns, you can do the right thing and alter your course. I'd recommend, at the very least, before this gets voted through, that you commit now, tonight, to a public meeting so that everyone has the opportunity to raise their concerns and provide the scrutiny a decision like this needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tarman. Sorry, Tolly, I beg your pardon. Do you beg your pardon? Two T's. Councillor McCord, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll take a slightly less partisan approach and try some balance in my comments. Listening to his introduction, Councillor Slope outlined a situation that any finance portfolio holder in any council of any political control could have said. The hand that was dealt to reform is a tough one, and we do have some issues locally. Now, we heard all about the gift in the pension funds, omitting the other gifts, millions lost in MPH, 5.8 million overspent on the Market Square, another $1.5 million write-off tonight, on top of the $500,000 that was more than that, having to be spent in 5 Spencer Parade. All part of that inheritance. And the in-year budget that we talked about at the first item and projected 10 million overspend was the riskiest ever set. And I'm not surprised that it's not being met. The in-year budget that was not deliverable, set by an administration that knew it was on the way out and could turn up then tonight and say, oh, we told you so. The previous administration knew the Children's Trust was 10 million overspent, and their answer was just to correct it by 1.8 million. And surprise, this year we have the greatest overspend from that department, needing another 20 million adjustment in this year's proposed budget. Now, I highlighted these issues in February at the council meeting, but our then Conservative administration knew better. And no matter what anyone says, the position would be the same if it was Conservative, Reform, Labour or Liberal Democrat control. The success of Reform has given the opportunity for government to continue what it did last year and move more money from those areas that they think are more likely to vote Labour and punish those that they think did not. Now, Mark, Reform won the election with a relatively policy-light agenda, and that has served you well to date. But if you stand for nothing, you will fall for anything. On green bins, we are now proposing to charge about half what the former Daventry District Council charged for all its services to empty one bin 25 times a year. This cannot reflect the costs and is much more than double charging. And now you have fallen for these proposals on car parking in the market towns, something that had been vetoed regularly by the previous administration. But all parties have sent their representatives to sit in this chamber to say it's not fair. Labour, Conservative and the Liberal Democrats have made the case that what's good for Northampton is good for us all. Please, don't give me "it's not fair" as a reason. It's not fair you can't go to the theatre in Brackley, Daventry or Towcester. It's not fair there's no train station. It's not fair you can't get a bus or a scooter. It's not fair that nothing is spent on the regeneration in the market towns and hundreds of millions in Northampton. Charging in the market towns will drive more people to the principal towns. Maybe that's the aim, to go to Northampton. But Banbury, Rugby and Milton Keynes will also be the beneficiaries. Our local business need more trade, not less. Free car parking make the market towns attractive. It's a stupid idea and needs a rethink. In this town, I've done more than most to increase parking provision and keep it free. I have always opposed charging and will continue to do so. We also need to reset the culture of seeing the rural residents as the cash point to fund Northampton. Now, I've not heard anything from anyone else as to what they would do differently to plug the gap. So I will offer alternatives. And here are three things. One, we need to bring financial discipline to the Children's Trust. I suggest that we pay the contract sum only, and any overspend is sent to the Department for Education. They wanted it, they can fund it. Two, improve our council tax collection rate from 96% to nearer 99%. For each 1%, it's £2.9 million of increased revenue. You can raise much more than parking charges just by doing that. An evening team working to 9 o'clock at night, calling, hustling is what we have, what we need. And three, we need to radically rethink how we deploy our services. We must seriously look at artificial intelligence deployed at pace and reducing headcount significantly. The easy option is to continue to take more from our residents. We now have Rachel Reeves picking our left-hand pocket and Mark Arnold picking our right-hand pocket. That's not the change people thought they voted for in May. It's time to stop and radically rethink this budget. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor McCord. Well, that was sweeten the blow somewhat, maybe. Well, I think we've had the conversation about the peanut cracknels being abolished in 1989, but there we go. Wasn't the only thing that went then. He's very generous. In a notably smaller tin. Should we pause for thought? They get smaller every time, indeed. Thank you to our speakers. We will now go to members of the Cabinet and supporting officers. There's a huge amount of content there that's come out from our speakers and our public speakers as well to be processed. Know that there's a fairly comprehensive response already prepared to most of the items. Any members of the Cabinet? Martin and Stuart. Martin first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll not pick up on the political points. Lots of those points that were made this evening were political points. I'm certainly not going to get caught in that crossfire. There's a few technical points I just want to pick up on and clarifications given. One was about the mansion tax, which was mentioned. That isn't applicable for next year. It's applicable for the year after. So we're still waiting for the details to come out. What we aren't certain of at the moment is what happens to those receipts, whether they go into central government. We think they do, based on the information we've seen so far. And whether some of it then comes back to us locally, we're not clear on that position yet. But we don't think it's all kept locally. But it's not been brought in yet. We don't have the detailed guidance. It comes in for the following financial year. Contract inflation was mentioned and the use of indices within contract inflation. The contracts are set for the life of the contract. They do quite often within that. In most contracts, we'll say this particular index will be applied at this point in time. Those indexes are set at a point in time. A number of them, depending on the service that we have contracted for, will be based on a particular index relating to that particular service area. But for example, a number of them will be related to CPI index at September. We know what that figure is now, so we can build that growth in. So the indices are in the contracts. We know what those indices are, but we don't know what those figures will be until we get past a certain point of time. We can look those up and make sure we build them in. There was lots of other detailed questions that you asked, Councillor Keeble, but I couldn't keep up with them all. So if you could just send them through to me, then I can give you a written response on those ones that I couldn't keep up on. I'm going to turn to Stuart in a minute on the museum, but there's just one further point, which is on family hubs. So you talked about the family hubs capital. You couldn't see the capital programme for family hubs. It is in there. It's buried on one of the pages. There's 1.9 million left for capital for the further rollout of family hubs. In terms of locations, where they're based and the reasons they're based there, I'm sure not tonight, but Melanie Barnett will be able to give you information in terms of the logic and the rationale behind that, or Councillor Shaw. But that capital programme is in there. It's within the capital programme. It's 1.9 million left for the rollout of those hubs. So they're the points that I just wanted to pick up in terms of clarification. I will hand to Stuart to pick up on the museum point, because I think there is a mistype.
Sorry. Could I just ask for clarification about the point about the family hubs? I just wanted the breakdown, and I looked all through. Could you just give me the paragraph or the page reference so I can follow it through, please? or if one of your colleagues could during the course of the meeting, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
While Stuart's responding to the next question, I'll find the page for you. It doesn't break it down by site, but it gives you the balance that's left. So I'll come back to that in a second.
Thank you, Martin. So Stuart?
Martin, I'll have to be quick because it's a very quick response to the museum. That we've been doing with all of our assets, work with town and parish councils, local community groups, et cetera, about the future management of those assets. And again, lots of work with town and parish councils in regard to that. The museum, we are looking at not closing. That was an error in the paper. We are not or considering that, but we are looking at, with all our assets, how we work better with our community and our partners and our town and parishes. So again, I think that error has been corrected in the most recent paper. If it hasn't, sorry, I will double check that, but it will, before it goes out for consultation, it will not say it's going to be closed. It will refer to collaborative working that looks at more efficient use, et cetera. So again, just to clarify that particular point.
Chair, sorry, can I just ask for complete clarity on that point? Because the local councillor, one of them I spoke to this evening, who wasn't aware of that this was that this was a proposal. The concern is about the budget reduction, okay? You've got a £10,000 budget reduction, so will that be taken out? Perhaps we could clarify after the meeting.
Yeah, we'll definitely clarify that. But again, I think the main issue there was the closure of the museum. That isn't indeed what was the thinking behind that. It was a misinterpretation of a conversation that went in there, which again, I'll put up my hand and say I missed that one. So we'll have corrected that. And again, we'll confirm after the meeting.
Okay, just conscious background noise is getting picked up on microphones as well. Councillor Stansfield.
Yeah, just to obviously cover just a bit of a point about the green bin. Obviously, it's an increase of £20, yeah, but if you actually look over the year, it's £1.54 per week, which obviously is not a great deal, but obviously it is to some people. Now, obviously, that would you'd probably spend more actually in petrol going to the actual recycling centre than you would actually pay the extra to put in your bin. So also with the one-off obviously charge, obviously we brought in a charge for one item rather than 3 items, as well as 3 items for the bulky collection. This was trying to collect some of the, because we just see, as you know, we see a lot of items like single items like fridges, freezers, just on the pavements. So obviously some people don't have don't have 3 items, just got 1 item. So we're just trying to obviously look at that and trying to capture some minimum items rather than being a fly tips.
Thank you, Councillor Stansfield. Other members from the floor to speak before returning to Councillor Slope? I'll add some bits and pieces in due course.
Thank you, Chair. We've had some very interesting contributions to the debate this evening. And I would point out that the Conservatives in particular misunderstand parking charges or our reasons surrounding them. So the reasons that we're looking at parking charges are fairness. Why should the rest of West Northants subsidise Towcester and Daventry's free parking? And it's understandable why residents of Towcester and Daventry want to make sure that their parking remains free. And I'm sure that they will come up in alternatives when they put those through. The other part is traffic management. Our surveys show that charges actually improve turnover, which increases footfall, which is it.
Funny, man.
Yeah. And this actually increases footfall for businesses because you can while you're driving around trying to find a parking spot, that's not good for anyone. Now it's possible someone would come back and say, well, actually, can we have an hour's free parking? Can we have half an hour's free parking? That actually, when they're limited, that increases footfall. The other thing is, if you try and park in Towcester for more than 3 hours, you can't park in Towcester for more than 3 hours without getting a ticket. So what you could do there is, in the future, if this were to be adopted and there wasn't another alternative coming forward, you could pay and actually stay, pay to be there longer than 3 hours. So there's different reasons. And there's proper regulation. Parking charges are a traffic management tool, not primarily a revenue stream. It would actually, and I'm not sure it's been taken on board, but it'd actually be illegal. And as I said, the Conservatives in particular don't seem to understand this. It would be illegal under the Road Traffic Act of 1984 to introduce parking charges primarily for revenue generation. Because, yeah, as I said, the Conservatives don't understand the law. No surprise there. They don't understand financial management either. What, the financial management? Okay, let's come on.
Sorry, Councillor Slope, just pause. Can the members in the public gallery please respect the speaker? The Cabinet have done so while you've indeed been speaking yourselves. A little bit of decorum, please. Councillor Slope.
They were giving us a bit of a history lesson. I'll come back to the Conservatives because they seem to be quite strong on this, about legacy debt. Now, and the legacy they left us with. Now, the actual Conservative legacy debt, just from their 2114s back in 2018, now they've had 20 years of administration. We've had 7 months, but in their 20 years of administration, they left us a debt of 553 million. That's not to invest in anything. And what we've done, that was split between 316 million legacy debt that went to West Northants Council, 237 million went to North Northamptonshire Council, which I'm sure they don't thank them for either. So that total legacy debt, 553 million. So of our share, that 316 million pounds worth of legacy debt means that we pay 10 million every year just in interest. So we don't get anything for that. If we hadn't got that, we wouldn't have to look at any of these measures. Well, most of these measures. So if you want to look at anyone to say, why have you got to do these things? Well, I suggest you look at the Conservative Party. And on a national basis, we're looking at Doge, and we can go on to that if you want to, because nothing's ever been promised. But Doge, it's a national, at a national level, was to look at the government inefficiency. And 14 years of Conservative inefficiency was followed by an absolute horror of a Labour government that we've now got in place. But perhaps that's getting a bit too political for this debate. And I know how sensitive they get when I start to bring up these matters. Anyway, moving swiftly back to the parking. Blue badges came up. Many low-income families without disabilities struggle to afford parking charges. A blue badge indicates a mobility need, but not necessarily a financial hardship. We have with disabled residents who can afford to contribute, and we have families living in poverty who currently pay full price. So I know these are all going to go back for consultation, and that's where they should rightly go. And I would just encourage those people that don't feel the parking charges are fair, only for people coming from those particular towns that would be hit by them, that they put alternatives up, what we should look at. Should the alternatives be, should there be some free parking time period, half an hour before the parking kicks in? That was a big concern. Or, you know, the shops are going to lose out on that footfall not coming in. Well, that's not a bad idea, is to come back with some alternatives. It's a consultation paper. The consultation starts tomorrow. It doesn't finish tonight. And it's not something that is going to finish tonight. There's probably quite a few other things that we can pick up on. But you've got to go home. Okay, no. Chair, for now, I'll leave that back to you.
Thank you, Councillor Slope. Does anyone else from the floor have anything to add? So the public speaking sectors, you need to register to speak, unfortunately, so I'm afraid that's passed and we've heard from the members. Thank you, Councillor Slope. Thank you to officers and everybody who's brought this to where it's at. A draft budget for consideration. I've spoken with opposition leaders in recent weeks as well, not certainly the last couple of days as well, and that paper with the detail in the red, amber, greens in the Star Chambers report will be released, and welcome the discussion about what you'd like to consider. I think that what we've got before us, if we were going to sum this up, and I'm sure this will be taken as a quote, this is the best of the worst in front of us tonight, and I think we need to strongly consider that statement. But there's worse in the Star Chambers output of what we could do instead. I said this morning on an interview that we've got statutory minimums to certain things. We've got library provisions, and up for ballot there is, do we close the libraries on given days per week and start taking things away? This is about delivering essential services, giving it balance and not affecting people's lives and welfare, whilst looking at the levers we've got to raise the revenue that we're missing in the gap. So I invite everybody to participate in the consultation. I'll be advocating doing that out and about on the streets and in my ward and in the towns as we visit over Christmas and the period afterwards. The key point on this, and we've heard about the debt figures, the staggering figures we've got, and also the rising send override. I think the figure I've got would upwards of extra of 150 million by the time we get back to 2028 when the government take that on. And at 150 million at 3%, there's another £4.5 million pressure, and that's, you know, we can't raise the money quick enough to cover that, so we do need urgent answers. For the record, I wrote to the Secretary of State, and I have received a response from Alison McGovern MP, and that was relating to debt forgiveness. And we've seen data in the press. That article was actually picked up by the Municipal Journal and published, and that was on debt forgiveness for legacy debts. And we've seen Surrey Council receiving £500 million in debt forgiveness to write off what they've got. To put this into context, and Councillor McCord was a co-signatory with Councillor Martin Griffiths of NNC on there. Councillor McCord is the leader of the former Shadow Authority. We did a joint letter, and we're talking here about a quarter of that debt being written off to alleviate these burdens we're now placing on taxpayers. This wasn't something my party did in local government. We know where it came from, and we've visited that point tonight multiple times. So we will persevere and try again. I'm hoping our members of Parliament, they're in the room, will join forces and try to lobby the government and do this, because these are the dials that we can turn to take away the burden of the taxpayers here today. So I don't want to be cited by Councillor McCord as the penny pincher in the other pocket. I certainly don't want to be compared to Rachel Reeves. So nor will I be, thank you. But I think we all know what we've got to do, and we need to collectively work together, like I said at the very beginning of the opening phrase. So to our MPs and those that represent Northampton North and South, maybe they can work with us to see if they can appeal to the better nature of Miss Reeves and their colleagues in the Treasury. If there's nothing else to add, and it doesn't appear there is, we'll take a proposer and a seconder from the floor and take this draft budget and MTFP to a vote. Councillor Hastie proposing, Councillor Last seconding, and a vote with a show of hands. Thank you very much, members, and that has passed unanimously. I think at this point, it's 8:20, if we're okay, I'll take a 10-minute break, and then we'll just finish off and conclude with items 10, 11, 12 and 13 on tonight's agenda. Thank you. So we'll do just that. And the next item on tonight's agenda is item number 10, the draft housing revenue account, HRA budget 26-27 and medium-term financial plan. And Councillor Slope, you're back in the chair to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, Councillor Slope, can you just pull the microphone a bit nearer?
Yeah.
It's picking up on the feed. Thank you.
So I'm pleased to present for your consideration the housing revenue account draft budget for 26-27 and our medium-term financial plan for that. This is a budget that reflects both our statutory responsibilities and our strategic ambitions for council housing in West Northamptonshire. It also marks an important period as we move housing services back under the direct control of the council. So to put the financial financial context, the draft budget before you today proposes a total of income of 70.6 million and expenditure of 37.6 million, resulting in a planned 2.7 million net contribution to reserves. This represents a significant strengthening of our financial position and demonstrates the sound financial management we've maintained across the HRA. The contribution to reserves is crucial. It improves our resilience and supports our ability to manage future risks within the HRA, particularly during this period of transition as we bring housing services back in-house from April 26. This is prudent financial management that will benefit our housing service for years to come. So coming on to rent settlements. Following the government's confirmation of the rent settlement for the next decade, we are proposing a 4.8% in average rents from £114.80 to £120.31 a week. This is in line with the CPI plus 1% as set out in the government's amended rent standard. I want to be clear that this increase is essential. It generates an additional 2.3 million in dwelling rent income, which funds the continuing investment in our housing services for our tenants. Delivering safe, high quality and sustainable homes remains a fundamental priority for West Northamptonshire, and this income underpins that commitment. Without this increase, we would face significant challenges, not only this year, but every year going forward. We recognise the impact on our tenants, particularly those facing financial challenges. Vulnerable tenants will be offered protection through the welfare system, with benefits matching the September CPI rate of 3.8%. We're also proposing the same 4.8% increase for service charges, garage rents and commuter surcharges. This will increase the average rent from £21.12 to from £12.12 to £12.70 per week. Investment in our housing stock. The capital programme is at the heart of the budget. And it demonstrates our commitment to sustained substantial investment in our homes. We are proposing a 78.6 million capital programme for 26-27, with 33.6 million dedicated to investment in our existing stock of approximately 11,300 homes and 37.6 million for new build development. This investment ensures we can continue to invest substantially in our homes, meet our responsibilities to tenants and strengthen our long-term resilience of the service as housing services transition back to central control, council control. This investment is not optional. Following our regulatory self-referral and C3 grading in November 24, we made a commitment to the regulator of social housing through our Business Improvement Action Plan. This budget delivers on that commitment and ensures we have the resources to maintain compliance with health and safety regulations, strengthen oversight, and improve the quality of homes for our residents. The investment is informed by up-to-date stock condition surveys. MPH projects that by the end of this financial year, we'll have reduced non-decent properties from 19.15% to 8%. The remaining work is built into the capital programme. We are also continuing our critical fire safety programme with 25.7 million allocated over the medium term to complete cladding replacement works. Additionally, 3.7 million is included in the plan to ensure council properties achieve an EPC C rating by 2030, supporting both our environmental commitments and reducing energy costs for tenants. This level of investment is safer, but this level of investment in safer, better quality housing demonstrates our commitment to estate improvements, heating upgrades, disabled adaptations, and community facilities across West Northamptonshire. Moving on to new homes delivery. Our new build programme remains ambitious. We are planning for 150 new homes per year, which not only addresses housing need, but also enables us to fulfill our agreements with Treasury regarding the retained right to buy receipts. The recent changes to the right to buy discounts have an impact. We saw 126 sales by the end of October 25-26, driven by applications submitted by November 24 with those discount changes. We anticipate sales will reduce to around 50 per year from 27 to 28 onwards. While this reduces our capital receipts, it also means we retain more stock and the associated rental income. The government's July 24 policy update now allows us to use 100% of the RTB receipts for eligible spending, up from 50%. This doesn't increase our total resources, but it does provide greater flexibility in how we deploy them across fewer schemes. Moving on to management fees and transition planning. The proposed management fee to Northampton Partnership Homes for 26-27 is 70.1 million. This represents the final year of current arrangements as we prepare for the transition of housing services back to direct council delivery from April 26. The fee has been developed in a close partnership with NPH and reflects updated investment plans on recent stock conditions, surveys, and revised cost estimates. The capital programme element has increased by 2.9 million, driven primarily by the need to invest properly in our existing housing stock to meet compliance standards. As part of the housing services transition, this budget also ensures funding is in place to support the move of enabler services back in-house. This includes investments in new systems, strengthened oversight, and the foundations needed for a modernised, directly delivered housing service. The decision taken by Cabinet in November to bring enabler services back in-house from the 1st of April 26 is reflected in our reserve planning, with these services continuing to provide NPH and paid for through the management fee during that transition year. So moving on to reserves and financial resilience. Our reserve strategy is prudent and appropriate. We are maintaining a minimum working balance of £5 million with projected balances of around £1 million above this threshold. The planned £2.7 million contribution to reserves in 26-27 strengthens this position and provides us with the financial headroom to manage risks and invest in service improvements during this period of transition beyond. Reserve usage in 26-27 includes just slightly over £1 million for implementing a new housing IT system and £0.8 million for the cost of bringing MPH services back in-house. These are strategic investments that will improve service delivery and efficiency as we move to direct council control. so meeting our strategic objectives. This budget aligns with our housing strategy in 4 key themes: delivering homes people need and can afford, improving the quality, standard and safety of homes and housing services, supporting residents to live healthy, safe, independent and active lives, and supporting thriving and sustainable communities. It also delivers on our affordable housing plan adopted in 2024. The dedicated affording housing development team we established is now leading the creation of new council homes, and this budget provides the financial foundation for that work to continue. The consultation process. Budget consultation will commence on the 23rd of December, tomorrow, and run for 6 weeks, closing on the 3rd of February. We will analyse the feedback carefully, and it will inform our final budget report back on the 16th of February 26. The Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee will also have a draft budget and provide comments before the final Cabinet decision. So the recommendations, I'm asking Cabinet today to approve the following proposals for consultation. The draft HRA budget for 26-27, a 4.8% increase in average rents from £114.80 to 120.31 pence per week, a 4.8% increase in tenants and leaseholder services charges excluding utilities, a 4.8% increase in garage rents and other surcharges. The draft 2026-27 management fee to Northampton Partnership Homes, the draft HRA capital programme for 26-27 to 2030-31. In conclusion, this is a robust, sustainable budget that meets our statutory obligations while advancing our strategic priorities. It positions us effectively for important transitions ahead as we bring housing services back under direct council control. It invests heavily in our existing housing stock to ensure compliance and quality. It continues our programme of new affordable homes, and it strengthens our financial resilience through prudent contributions to reserves that will support us through the transition period and beyond. The proposed rent increase is in line with government policy and generates essential income for housing services. 78.6 million capital programme addresses critical health and safety requirements, improves the quality of homes for residents, supports our environmental commitments, and provides the foundation for modernised, directly delivered housing services. Most importantly, this budget delivers for our tenants through a safe, decent homes, continued investment in neighbourhoods, and strengthened compliance and oversight, and a commitment to building the affordable homes our communities need. We are entering an important period as we move housing services back under direct control of the council. This draft budget ensures that we can continue to invest substantially in our homes, meet our responsibilities to tenants, and strengthen our long-term resilience of the service. I commend this draft budget to the Cabinet for consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slope. So, Councillor Keeble first.
Thank you very much. There are four things I want to draw out of this. One's just a small one, but the three are more substantial issues. The small one is that rent increases, as you yourself said, Councillor Slope, and has generally been seen, is 4.8%. However, on page 246, it refers for some reason to 7.7%, not necessarily here, but it would be good just to have an explanation for the difference in those figures. The three main issues I want to bring out. One is about the need for alignment in capital spending between the Northampton Partnership Homes 30-year investment strategy and the HRA capital spending programme as set out here. The MPH document has some thematic headings such as AWAB's law and decent homes, whereas this document talks about the internal maintenance, external maintenance, and so on. And I think particularly as MPH comes back in-house, it would be really good if those headings and all the figures can be aligned so we can really understand what's happening and how it will look on the ground, which is more important. The second thing is a split between the housing revenue account and the general fund. I won't go into all the technicalities of that, but obviously there are different things can be attributed to different budgets depending. Part of the thinking about bringing Northampton Partnership Homes back in-house was to get efficiency savings, as Councillor Slope says. The issue is how these are shared out. Note that NPH spend is paid for only by Northampton tenants, whereas the general fund spending is paid for by council taxpayers across the whole of Northants. So loading anything onto the HRA not only is right, I mean, there are obviously technical rules, but it also has a disproportionate impact on a smaller number of people. And I think there's need for complete clarity and transparency and reasons given for the split, and it must be fair between the two. The reason, of course, why it falls only on the Northampton tenants is because in the other predecessor councils, the housing services were outsourced. The third one, and it's a main point though, and it's this diagram here on page 242 of the papers, where it shows the risks. One is about repairs, and it's good to see that that's changed from red to amber. However, the need for more affordable housing, in particular social housing, stays on red, and it's one of the most acute risks facing the entire council, because if you don't achieve that, then it's not just the housing revenue account that suffers, because the homelessness budget, of course, sits in the general fund, and there's already an overspend on the temporary housing budget. Plus, as we all know, there are all the dysfunctions that go with having a large number of homeless people, including chronic overcrowding, which we already see in so many homes. As a portfolio holder well knows, I've written to him about it, and I know he understands the issue. There's the problems of street homelessness, and there's a pressure on families living in temporary accommodation with repeated moves. Now, in 715, and Councillor Slope indeed said, there's funds to build 150 council homes a year. Councillor Slope, I will take issue with you, because earlier you said that you don't have to spend a budget. Well, this budget, you really do have to spend, because there are 2,000 people actively bidding for properties. There's 3,000 applications for housing waiting to be assessed. 150 homes is only 12 and a half a month. That is not very much, but I don't see the pipeline anywhere for delivering housing at that rate starting from next year. So, we need a task force, preferably turbocharged, to deliver that amount of social housing. And we need it, or the pressures on all the other budgets gets worse. And of course, the conditions of so many people who look to this council for housing also become desperate. So we need it for the families, and we need it for the future of the children, and we need it for the well-being of our town.
Thank you, Councillor Keeble. I've spoken to Martin on point one. Your query on page 246 should be 3.8%. So it's 4.8% there, consistent.
You've got 4.8, and then elsewhere you've got 7.7 for some reason, but I'm quite happy to bring it up later. Quite happy to deal with it later if needs be.
Chair, just to confirm, it's an inaccuracy in the report. It should show 4.8% in the appendix. The 7.7% is from a previous year, and that part of the narrative just hasn't been updated. So it will be updated for the final budget.
I'd be really grateful if you wouldn't mind sending me a note on that. I just didn't take it down. I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Okay, I'll let Councillor Slope respond to the rest of your points, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Holland-Delamere, I've got you written off on that one, line through. So to Councillor Harris, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just a few points from me. Just a little bit of clarity. Councillor Slope in his preamble mentioned April 2026 for coming back in-house. I presume he meant actually 27, because I believe we've been working to a 2-year plan, so that was just a point of clarity rather than anything else. Like Councillor Keeble, the one area that concerns me the most, there are plenty of areas that do, but the one that jumps out at me is the build rate of 150 homes a year. It specifically refers to those as council stock, council homes, not affordable or any other category, but actual council homes. And if you look at the report which comes later on today, which shows that we've built nothing, basically, pretty much in the last quarter, I really can't see how we're going to amp that up to get to that number. And again, as Councillor Keeble says, it's really not anywhere near enough. We should probably be building at least 300, ideally, if not more. So that's to flag, big area of concern for me, and it would be good to see more detail specifically on what that actually looks like in terms of build-out plans for that. So my comment, therefore, relating to that is what consideration has been given to provision of capital investment for acquisition of property rather than new build property? Because obviously, if we're in the market looking for some properties that we could utilise to put people in quite swiftly, that's eminently going to be quicker than waiting from scratch and building. There may be some compromises, but it's a question mark. I know it's an approach that we've taken with children and children's homes, and I genuinely think it's something we should be considering in this arena too, because it might accelerate the bringing on board of houses much more quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. And Councillor McCord, anything from you? And that concludes the members wishing to speak. And to the floor, so officers first. Anyone favouring that? Stuart? And then I've Councillor Hasty and Jane. Either or. Have a bid. Councillor Hasty.
Thank you, Chair. I'll let you step in a second, Stuart. Thank you very much for the questions. Regarding the build-out programme, actually, I'll address the situation about the phased process. You're quite right. It's a phased approach starting in April 26 with a look to finish by April 27. Doesn't necessarily mean we'll run it to that time. It'll be taken in as quickly but as smoothly as possible. And with regards to the building programme, that's our building programme, in-house building programme of 150 a year. Obviously, our own building programme stalled with the situation with the MPH big sites, new campus and the like, roof gardens. That doesn't mean to say that RPs are not still building for us. We're not looking at any acquisitions there. So with the RPs and when we get back online with Kevin Langley's regeneration team, we're looking at a target of 650 to 750 new homes per year. I'll let, I think, Stuart come in on the other aspect.
Or Jane.
I'll let Jane come in on the other aspect of it. Thank you, Chair.
Indication. Hello. Yes, so as you might remember, the housing delivery plan came through Cabinet, which was the 650 figure with a stretch target of 750. I think we've already visited in Cabinet the issues with the big sites, which have led to a gap in our own delivery programme. What we have done, sorry, I've got a cold at the minute. What we have done is looked much closer at acquisitions. So we've upped our acquisitions programme this year to try and replace some of the properties that would have been through that development programme. And at the last Cabinet, you would have seen the homes from Taylor Wimpey come through as well. So we're trying to plug some of that gap with acquisitions. Kevin Langley from the regeneration team is leading on our, he's the AD for place shaping at the moment, interim AD for place shaping, is leading on the programme for us in terms of housing development. And he is currently establishing a pipeline of which we have enough numbers to meet that in future years. I think it starts from 2027, but we'll bring the pipeline through with members anyway and through scrutiny as well so that you can see that pipeline to make sure we can hit that 150. We've also got the Housing Delivery Board that also is working on, are there other options for intermediate products, but also to support in the delivery of affordable. Our focus is social rented first, but obviously not every site is going to be viable for all social rented. So we'll look to maximise social rent and work on what other products can sit alongside that to make the sites viable. So that's our maximisation. Sally, there's a couple of things that you raised as well. So let me just. So the rent increase, I think Martin's responded to. Aligning the business plan with the HRI finance is absolutely yes, we will be doing that to make sure that they, as it comes back into the council, you can read across the two, so it's very clear how the two align. And with regards to any efficiencies made, obviously efficiencies, as you will know, technically anything that is spent from the HRA has to be for tenants' benefit. So if we are looking at efficiencies that are on things that are for the HRA, then it's to the tenant's benefit. It has to be for the HRA, the efficiency, but there may be join up through the pathways that will help with efficiencies on both sides, but that would be worked on that. And with regards to overcrowding, lack of properties, yes, we've already had this conversation. Obviously, we have multiple issues that are UK-wide that we're working on, and that's why we're trying to work on the programme of development in the way that we are.
Councillor Keeble, did you want to come back in?
There's just, yeah, as an example, you've got a proposal to take the cost of maintaining play equipment in 6 sites. That's being shifted from the revenue fund to housing revenue account, from the general fund to the housing revenue account. Now, if that's in an enclosed block, like in the Park Drive ones, where it's just on counts, it's on MPH land or housing estate land, and it's just for use by the tenants, and that's fair. But if it's in an area which is accessible by the general public, then it should stay in the general fund. That's the kind of thing. And you say 6, and I've struggled to think of 6 play areas that were restricted to tenant use and were on housing land. So it's just an example like that, which I think we need to be really careful about. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to let Stuart come in on that because.
I'm more than happy to look at those. We've got 19 play areas in total in that particular contract. There was a review of what exactly the circumstances he identified. I couldn't say which ones were in and which ones were out, but I'm certainly happy to double check that that's actually followed the conditions that you've identified, because that is exactly how I understand that appraisal was taken. But let me take that one away, Sally, and I'll happily come back to you if that's okay. Perfect.
Okay, no, you're welcome. Thank you. Anyone from floor before returning to Councillor Slope?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the contributions and the answers given. But I would remind everyone that this is a consultation document. So again, starting tomorrow, there will be consultation, and you can submit any questions you've missed out on, or you've not felt you've got the full answer this evening. Please pop it into that consultation. Thank you.
Okay, so if that's everything summed up, I'll take a proposer from the floor. Councillor Coos, seconded Councillor Manning, and a vote. Members, please. Thank you very much. That's passed. Okay, then we get on to the really exciting stuff. Item number 11 on tonight's agenda. The one at West Northamptonshire Plan Performance Report Q2 2025-26. I'm sure all members have had plenty of time. Last time we did this, it was a very well contributed piece from around the room from all parties, and it was thoroughly beneficial to go through it in the level of detail we did. I'll read you a summary and we'll take questions, and got officers in every domain that have got a contributing factor to this report here, and we'll go through things and add some value where we can. If there are any takeaways from this, respond in the new year when we return to the office. So the Q2 report provides Cabinet with our performance update against the One West Northamptonshire Plan, covering the period from July to September. Gives a balanced picture of how the council is performing against its priorities, highlighting both where we're delivering strongly for residents and where there's further improvement required. The performance framework itself has continued to evolve. Earlier this year, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which was the corporate overview at that point, reviewed the indicators we report, and their recommendations help sharpen the focus of this report and ensure it remains meaningful, transparent and aligned to the Council's agreed priorities. I'll touch briefly on those changes before turning to the key messages from the Q2 performance. But overall, this quarter shows good progress in a number of priority areas, alongside some of the clear pressures that we're actively managing. The report's intended to support constructive discussion, provide assurance, and where performance is strong, and highlight where additional focus and interventions are required. So the scrutiny recommendations. Earlier this year, the corporate overview and scrutiny reviewed the corporate performance measures and made a number of recommendations to strengthen either being implemented or are in progress. Changes already made include the removal of measures that no longer add value, the introduction of new indicators on agency spend, staff sickness, exclusions, elective home education, homelessness, prevention and planning extensions of time, and clearer narrative around EV charging and age debt. Some measures are still being developed where data quality or system limitations currently prevent meaningful reporting, with further improvements expected from Q3 onwards. Overall, the report reflects a more focused and robust performance framework shaped by scrutiny challenge and ongoing member engagement. So top 5 messages that I pulled out of this report for you are: number 1, the improved delivery on affordable housing. Delivery accelerated significantly in Q2, with affordable housing completions more than trebling to Q1. This demonstrates tangible progress against housing priorities. Some performance measures have emerged this quarter. There's been notable dip in homelessness prevention and relief outcomes, alongside a reduction in planning timelines. While performance remains above target and minimum standards in some areas, momentum has slowed and is being actively addressed through targeted intervention and transformation projects. And children's services indicators require close attention. A sharp rise in repeat child protection plans and a fall in adoption timeliness, noting small numbers here, represent the most significant negative movements between Q1 and Q2. Residents are signalling dissatisfaction more clearly. One of the things we've done is prioritising transparency, openness, our ability to be approached and engage. Customer satisfaction has reduced slightly, and complaints escalated and upheld have increased. The report highlights recurring themes, including building control, delays, and sender-related issues, things we've heard in this chamber, we hear in the main council chamber at full council meetings. Financial pressures remain, but with signs of grip in some areas. The council continues to forecast overspend positions, as we've heard earlier tonight, with agency spend rising. However, overdue debt levels have reduced, indicating improvement and debt management. Some areas for improvement, but not necessarily bad news. Affordable housing delivery, substantial quarter-on-quarter increase. Adult social care reviews, significant improvement in completion rates within the last 12 months. Weight management outcomes, marked improvement in residents achieving clinically meaningful weight loss. Library usage, we know this came up last time where we saw museum usage rise last time in the summer. Library usage has increased physical and virtual visitor numbers in the last recorded quarter. Debt recovery, reduction in debt overdue by 90+ days. NCT referrals, decisions made in a timely manner, seeing good improvement. And then the risks and the watch points for Cabinet, and certainly to be discussed when they come back the next quarter's reporting. The top 5 risks: repeated child protection funds. There was a large increase in Q2. Requires assurance on causes and remedial action. I know the team are already on that. Homelessness prevention and relief. Outcomes have fallen further below ambition, but significant work is underway to improve, with transformation projects underway. I'm sure our colleagues present will add some value to that. Planning performance. We have declining timelines that may affect housing and economic growth confidence, although performance remains above target. Performance has dropped slightly. Notable small numbers of applications, 3 are affected metric. Customer complaints, there's rising escalation, and upheld rates indicate service pressure points, mainly in delays in communications relating to building control, completions and inspections. I know I'm sure that will be discussed from members present as well. We're very aware that there's widespread across the whole WNC area around that. And there's decisions on property repairs that are also coming in, also delays in SEN assessments, but there's a similarity in the theme there. Financial sustainability, overspend forecast, and there is a reliance on agency staff that appears to be growing. So the quarter shows a mixed but clear picture. We're delivering strongly where it matters most to residents, particularly on affordable housing, whilst also being honest where performance has dipped. Children's safeguarding, homelessness outcomes, and customer experience are areas we're closely monitoring and acting upon. Financial pressures remain challenging, we've heard already tonight. There are positive signs in debt recovery, service improvement overall. And overall, Q2 reinforces the need to stay focused on delivery, improvement, and financial discipline. And I will move to some speakers, starting with Councillor Lister. You okay? Good. Thank you. Councillor Keeble. Have I got that right? It is for you, not Councillor Delamere. It is for you to speak on this one. So
do you want me to speak? Yes.
Yep, please.
I welcome some of the positive things in here, particularly the clearing of fly tipping up by over 30%. At one level, it also illustrates the scale of the problem. There's 3 areas I particularly want to look at. One is housing. and Chair, you have already identified quite a number of the issues. The most staggering figure is the number of new social houses started was 0. The previous quarter was 28. It's supposed to be 150 a year. So, I mean, we are way off being able to deliver that. And there is going to have to be, like I said, a real turbocharged task force of some sort to be able to get the provision up. The increase in affordable homes is really welcome, but affordability is a very flexible concept, and affordable doesn't mean affordable to a lot of people who are on average earnings and who don't have a bank of mum and dad to help with deposits and such like. The homelessness prevention figures are also well out of where they should be. On the children's issues, we all know about the increase in SEND and the difficulties there. Those will fall increasingly to government to sort out, and I think that's going to be a huge challenge. As you've identified, Chair, there's an issue about the increase in referrals to MASH safeguarding hubs, and also the number of children who are subject to repeated child protection orders. So they're going around a revolving door of care. And that is really damaging, and it makes you wonder what the interventions are to start with, and whether the children are being discharged from those orders too quickly, that they seem to keep on coming around again. The final one is about the smoking quit rate, which is referred to here, but one of the other things, and I'm not sure whether it's here or elsewhere it was a very full agenda to read, but it did say that the figure about the number of women smoking at time of delivery has been dropped, and that's because the Integrated Care Board has decided not to measure them any longer. I don't quite know why, because it can be very hard to deal with people's smoking habits, but the one thing you know about women when they deliver their babies, you know where they are, and you can get hold of them, and you can find out if they're smoking. And if you can, and you've also got a bit of a captive audience actually, and they could start to work with the women then when they're well motivated, towards their new children. And it just seems a complete missed opportunity, because those women, if they smoke at home, the smoke is obviously going to impact on all the other children, not just the new children. But it is so damaging, and it is so bad for the health of the children, that I really cannot understand why the Integrated Care Board doesn't resume measuring those figures, and why the council doesn't ask for them to do that, so that that very specific and very damaging public health measure can be picked up and dealt with. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Keeble. Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You picked up most of the points actually in your summary in terms of some of those areas that are flagging potential concerns, or certainly areas that need looking at carefully. The one that doesn't really give us the data that I think we need is the one relating to the fly tips, because although it indicates that we are clearing more fly tips compared to this time last year, it doesn't tell us whether the fly tips have gone up or not in terms of volume. Well, Councillor McCord says they have. My concern is actually obviously looking very closely at this quarter, given the changes to the HWRC booking systems. My general point is that we always seem to be looking at these KPIs way too late. I know that's to do with the system. Sorry, Councillor McCord. I'm sure Councillor McCord and I have both raised it before, but it is very late in the day. We're all almost at the end of the next quarter, and we're only looking at stuff from the first 2 quarters. So it's just very late data to be doing anything healthily with. And I think that applies to the administration as well as anyone else, to be frank. In priority 1, there's one area that has very scant detail, lots of narrative, but that's specifically around the economic growth agenda. And we have really very few measures in there. Yes, it makes links to the economic growth strategy and agenda, but that also is quite broad-based. And again, my plea would be that we should be starting to look much more closely at how we can quantify and look at what that sort of inward in growth and investment really looks like. Because at the moment, it's just narrative, yes, helpful, but it doesn't really tell us very much at all. And I think I'll leave it there because you, as I say, you have picked up the other areas that were on my list.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Cord.
Thank you. Well, the reason I
Quality
said,
Streets again, if you would, please.
oh yeah, no, they're not quite empty. There's still a few. The reason I said that flight tips have gone up, I don't recall ever seeing a figure beginning with the 6,000 on that report before. It was hovering more around high fours, early fives. So seeing 6,000 and some odd is, in my view, then definitely increasing. The other thing that can I also pick up on your comments, Mark, about incorporating some of the suggested changes that scrutiny did make. So thank you for that. It's good to see them in. One of the ones that I'm sure we asked for was to see an average length of time for determining a planning application, not the nonsense metric which is in there to satisfy MHCLG, because the or agreed extension bit is the bit then that makes it look like you've got great performance. What really matters is what date did you submit it and what date did you get an answer? And that can be years, but still be within this target, because every time that it's delayed for 4 months, it's, oh, we have an agreed extension. So I want to see the average time. And then I think also, you know, it's easy to pick out areas where we think there's failings, but there is a really good news story in priority 7 on time to turn around housing benefit times. Now that was something that went down, and can we just, you know, I'm sure Cabinet would want to recognise this. Belinda Green and her team did say it was going to get worse before it would get better, but it would get better. And looking at these figures, you know, the housing benefit average day is now 18.2 for new applications, 10.7 for change of circumstances, and 3 days for council tax reduction scheme change. So the people that need our help are getting turned around faster. And that is something that, you know, they did say it would go down, and Belinda was assured us it would improve. It has improved, and I think it would be quite right now to publicly recognise the work that her and her team have done to actually get back to that position. So it's easy to criticise, but I do think we should pick out the good news. And it's not invented good news. It is actually, you can go back through the previous ones and you'll see much worse figures than that. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McCord. I'll be sure to feed that back. Always come in with the Quality Streets. Just an orange one, please. Super. Festive cheer. I'm going to go around the room to officers on a few bits. I know Councillor Stansfield sitting next to Stuart. We'll have some bits on the fly tips around that and some data. I think it's mostly for various other people to provide their detailed summary. Thank you, Councillor Harris, for your feedback. Thank you, Councillor McCord, to the bit for revenues and bends. I'll certainly pass that on. And it absolutely is for us to reward the good work of our officers and the notable improvements we're making. And that's around the room. I'll start with Councillor Keeble's comments around housing and go to Jane, if I may, and Charlie. Councillor Hastings. And then we'll go around safeguarding to Mel.
In terms of the actual
Yeah, I think it's a similar point to the one that we talked about earlier, actually, with the programme. And obviously, we do have a gap in the programme, which we've talked about through the big sites in the programme that Northamptonshire Partnership Homes was running. We've been quite open about that in the cabinet meetings, that this would be an issue for a period of time. So, which is why we upped the acquisitions programme from that perspective. So I'm hoping we already answered that. I can't remember what the second question was. Sorry, Councillor Keeble.
The homelessness figures of prevention. There's various figures of the prevention and also relief.
Yeah. So at the moment, we're doing some work on those figures, partly because the way that they're recorded is on a specific definition. And a lot of the prevention work that we're dealing with at the moment is further upstream. So we've got things like Zantura that we're working on, which is a preventative tool. We're doing a lot of work on retaining people in the position they're in. So, for example, where there's a family breakdown, etc., we're doing a lot more work on sending out officers to work with the families to maintain the relationship up to the period where people can find housing through the housing register. Those figures aren't measured in the same way through that figure. So what we're doing at the moment is reviewing the way that the figures and the data is coming through. So that is specifically on the definition, the legal definition of prevention when we accept a prevention duty, which is not the same as the wider prevention work that's going on. So what we will do is once we've reviewed that figure, we will come back to through the performance and explain the figures and the differences between the different types of prevention to members. So Sally, I'll happily share that with you and with all of the other members that are interested in that at that point. But that prevention figure is very, very specific. And the more work that we do upstream, it impacts that figure because we're already picking up the people that are easy to prevent, if that makes sense, at an earlier stage. So I just need to do some work on that.
There's just one point, which is, can you just give an assurance that the maintaining of relationships doesn't apply in cases where there's any domestic abuse?
Yeah, absolutely. We're referring to people where there's family. The reason is that family relationships are broken down, but not where there's a domestic abuse issue.
Thank you. I'll go to Mel Barnett and Councillor Shaw, I beg your pardon, to talk about referrals to safeguarding and discharge rates, etc.
Thank you. So yeah, just to give some assurance in terms of the repeat child protection, this has been picked up as our Social Care Improvement Board and also our performance, practice and quality. And we do have a thematic audit that's been undertaken. And I'm conscious if I move away, I'm not going to, so it's strange when you're talking to somebody but not looking at them. Just to say as well that I totally agree with the points you've made in terms of the impact on children. So that's why this is being looked into. Can I just take the opportunity to talk about SEND, if that's okay as well? Because I think with the KPIs and the percentages, it doesn't really reflect the work that's going on. So I just wanted to give some figures, just again to give some assurance, and with the caveat that this isn't where we want to be. So I just want to say that before I give this update. So back in March of this year, we had 1,027 assessments that were ongoing. As it stands at the data that I looked at last week, we've now got 513, and 47% of those are still under the 20-week timescale. So I'm really confident in terms of our projections of getting close to the national average, which is 50% by March, April this year. And again, just to illustrate in terms of the hard work of the teams, back in March this year, we had 168 cases that were over 50 weeks. Again, the caveat is I'm not saying that's good. It's definitely not. But as it stands last week, we've now got 14. So I hope that illustrates the performance. And it does say in the narrative that as we clear this work, it doesn't mean that we're going to see the KPI percentage indicator go up. So I just wanted to illustrate that and obviously thank all of the people within my team for the great work that they've done since March this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. All good. Councillor Coos and Melanie Williams, the smoking rates amongst women, pregnant women, and ICB measures.
Yep, absolutely, Councillor Keeble. So public health remains completely at its core to be about smoking cessation, and it's a core NHS intervention as well in terms of prevention. And maternal health is part of both the Women's Health Strategy and our Best Start strategies, so it's absolutely essential. So the NHS has undergone significant reform in this year since part of the 10-year plan. So there's two things that happened. They're restructuring the centre, so that's been reduced and moving into the Department of Health and Social Care. That's impacting on data availability. The second measure is about the ICB clustering. So it's already across Northamptonshire. It's now joining across with Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland, so LLR as they describe it. So data's looked at the ICB footprint. So what we're doing locally through public health, data and intelligence is trying to understand our own population profiles in our own neighbourhoods, but there is going to be a lag, which is why we haven't deprioritised maternal smoking cessation, but we're not able to look at the data, so you can't really have a KPI about something you can't measure. That's the basis of which we measure. So we are going to be working with NHS to be looking at that data and the population profiles, but it's not data that's available for West Northants as it stands.
Chair, I saw the explanation about the changes in the NHS, but it seems ridiculous to not measure something which is so easily measurable just because of NHS organisational issues when, you know, there's a few hospitals here, we all know where they are, where those women will be. And I just wonder if it's a tail wagging the dog instead of the other way round. And perhaps the council could go back and put a bit more pressure on.
No, we agree.
And so do I. Thank you both. Okay, that I believe is Councillor Keeble's query sorted. So we're on to Councillor Harris. I'll touch on 2 and 3 about the priorities about economic growth and feedback. If you'd like to meet in the new year, very happy to sit down with that and see if we can adjust this in any way. And with Councillor McCord's input as a scrutiny chair as well, if you're open to that, I certainly am. And I think by going to Councillor Stansfield and Stewart, we'll probably answer both questions from Councillor McCord and Councillor Harris about fly tipping, missing data, references to household waste recycling, and where we already know that some of the future data is trending before it hits the report. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously the data is right. Yeah, it was 6,000 and something, wasn't it, in the second quarter? I imagine that was obviously. I imagine if you look back at the previous records, I imagine it's a seasonal thing, where people start throwing their stuff out of their houses during the spring and summer. As you know, most of you be aware in the room that we brought in a new strategy of clearing the fly tipping, which is proving very successful at the moment. In August 2025 this year, it got down to the SLA, 2-day SLA was 37%. Now we've gone to 81% for November. We've gone to a 5-day SLA, which is 98%. Actually, in October, it's 100% clear. It's not a perfect system, but the actual days to complete fly tip now is about 1.8 days. So it's a massive improvement. Obviously, the other side of it is the enforcement side of it to stop people actually fly tipping in the first place. That's a whole new thing. Obviously, I think it needs a lot more enforcement, a lot more knocking on doors. Me and Councillor Lass are very keen to get the EV wardens back up to strength so they can start that process and start knocking on doors and start giving fines out. Because without that, I don't think I think we're cracking the clear up rate, but we've got to do the other side of it. So yeah, we are going to carry on getting fly tipping because at the moment, it's very hard to catch these people because the evidence is very hard to get. And then when we do get the evidence, people do not want to come forward and name these people. It's a very hard process, yeah. But I'm happy on my side of it, the waste side of it, as in the clear up side of it. We brought it in, the new process started in August. It's gone very, very well. So if we can get the other bit done, hopefully in the new year, we'll get some more enforcement and then we'll hopefully see some good progress. With the obviously with the booking system, we haven't seen obviously I've got November's figures. Obviously it started at the beginning of November. Actually, fly tipping went down in November because it was 1,456 and then it went down to 1,364 in November. So at the moment, it's not proving that the booking system has created fly tipping. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Stansfield. I hope you're keeping a very keen eye on that number and the reports from the community. I think there's one other point I might lean to Stewart to answer about the planning detail. I'll let Stewart answer that one about what's possible, what's not, what could be.
Well, within the narrative, we do identify how many of the actual permissions or committees were either in date or extensions of time. So the narrative does provide that data. Yeah, no, it's identified the numbers there, but what isn't there is the actual average dates and times. So again, we can provide that. We are looking at planning. There's a lot of challenge at the moment in regards to planning. So we're working with the portfolio holder and the leader to make sure we come up with a plan that provides the confidence in the planning system as we go forward. I've always said that we're on a journey, that we're partway through that journey. I think we've seen significant benefit and better systems, etc., over the last 4 years. We're still working on that, and we're still moving that forward. So again, it's work in progress, and we'll continue to work with members. Scrutiny, I know we've got a couple of scrutiny opportunities there. One looking at Section 106. Again, we'll be looking at the overall process later in the year as well. So, yeah, more than happy to work with members to find out the information they want and provide that information. We're certainly open to challenge, but equally, we'd like to see the support in how we make it better as we go forward as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. I think that goes and answers all the questions we've had from the room. Anything from the floor? So, Councillor Luss, have you got anything to add on regulatory? Just some of this was about that.
Yes, I would just say there's plenty of pokers on the fire and they're being considered right now. So hopefully in the new year we can announce some details on the enforcement side.
Thanks, Councillor Luss. Councillor Petter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I would just like to say it's always welcome to see physical visitors to libraries and museums going up. That's very encouraging, and just want to thank all the 276,265 people that walked through our library's door for supporting that vital service, and our over 74,000 virtual residents who dropped in via their keyboards. This is all very important to continue, and all these figures do tell a story. Our libraries continue to provide accessible face-to-face and high-level digital services. This includes the most vulnerable groups, particularly those residents who don't like dealing with the council and they find it a bit more challenging, so they can go through the libraries. So libraries continue to remain a trusted and welcoming space, offering support, information, assistance, as do our museums that welcome just shy of 41,000. Again, offering our residents welcome destinations and provide support for local attractions and businesses for some truly amazing exhibitions. So I personally want to thank the teams who work tirelessly in our libraries and museums for their hard work.
Thanks, Councillor Petter. I'm conscious that say there's some good stuff coming up in the coming months and next year at the museum, and that we should, be working with all members to actively promote and get that footfall consistently up, or well reported. If there's no other contributions from the floor, I'll propose that report and take a seconder. Councillor Slope, and a vote please from the members. Thank you. 2 items left on tonight's agenda. The next is item number 12, the ERP Gold Shared Services Print Contract. To Councillor Luss to introduce the report, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to provide information and background regarding the proposal to re-award a contract for the provision of ERP Gold Shared Services Print Services for West Northamptonshire Council and its partners Cambridgeshire County Council, Milton Keynes City Council and North Northamptonshire Council. The ERP print service supports statutory and operational communications across shared service partners. The current contract expires on the 1st of May 2026, and a direct award to PSL Print Management Limited via procurement for housing PFH framework. Print, mailing and digital communications is proposed to ensure continuity, compliance and cost effectiveness. The new contract will run, including an optional extension, until April 2030. As the existing contract's already been extended to its limit, a regulatory compliant procurement process needs to be observed to award a new contract. West Northamptonshire Council will act as the lead authority, as we are already, for the procurement and contract management on behalf of all partners. The proposed contract duration is 3 years plus 1, with a forecasted total value of 1.853 million over the lifetime of the contract, hence this report. The share of costs attributed to WNC is 602k, and other partners are also engaged to follow respective governance processes. ERP Gold Enterprise Resource Planning System is a central platform used across shared services to manage key business functions and data, including HR, payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable, and finance. It supports the generation of printed documents required for statutory and operational purposes, enabling the service areas to provide relevant communications to customers, suppliers, and employees. Document types produced via the ERP platform include HR, payroll, payslips, and P60s, accounts payable, BACs, remittance advisors, checks, and construction industry CIS statements, and accounts receivable, invoice debts, and reminder letters, charged payment plans, and direct debit correspondence. Issues and choices. The council could do nothing. But that's not an option because, payslips are payslips and they're quite important. Undertaking a full procurement would be costly and time consuming with an estimated cost of over 309K, and that would be to engage with another supplier and implement APIs and systems for the print process. It's not as simple as just literally sitting on a computer and pressing print. These systems are quite complex. So recommendations. It is recommended that Cabinet A approves the direct award of the ERP print contract to PSL Print Management Limited via the PFH framework. B, endorse the procurement route as compliant and low risk. And C, delegate authority to the Executive Director, Resources, to execute the contract on behalf of all shared service partners. And that's the report, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Last. Has anyone got anything they would like to add from members? I've got no registered speakers. Anything at all from the bench? No. Anyone from the floor? It's fairly simple and self-explanatory, but no one wants to ask a question on a print contract.
Anything that helps print is a good idea.
Why don't they have digital payslips?
You need to declare an interest there, Councillor
No.
McCord, about
sorry.
printing.
Well,
Good.
I give way.
Anything that helps print is a good idea.
Oh, okay. I was going to say go digital, then we don't have to
Just going to
get
say,
your
I'm sure
payslip
your
online,
colleague
print
to
it
the
off.
left there might have a different opinion about friendliness and paper waste.
It's a bittersweet pill yeah, I mean, I'm also responsible for Paperlight, so it's a kind of conflict of interest to a degree.
Okay, if there's nothing to add, then I think it's self-explanatory. I have nothing to sum up, Councillor Last. I'll take a proposer from the floor. Councillor Manning, seconded by Councillor Coote, and a vote from members, please. Thank you, and that's passed. Last item on tonight's agenda is item 13, asset transactions. After a short break, Councillor Slope is back in the chair to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report covers 4 separate asset transactions, each with clear strategic and financial rationale. Let me outline them very briefly. First, our commercial disposals. We're proposing to sell land adjacent to Site 11 at St James Mill Road. This roadway was originally retained for the proposed St James Mill Link Road, which is no longer required. By disposing of this land, most likely to Cosworth, alongside their existing option exercise, we remove an ongoing maintenance liability whilst generating a capital receipt. It's great news that such a prestigious company is staying and investing in Northamptonshire. Second, we have Fog Cottages in Milton Malslaw, a pair of semi-detached houses that ceased being suitable for temporary accommodation 2 years ago due to their remote location. Since becoming vacant, they've suffered vandalism, antisocial behaviour. Continuing to hold these properties exposes us to ongoing security costs and liability risks with no service benefit. Third, 20 to 20A Sheep Street, 2 retail units where one tenant is in significant arrears and the property has fallen into disrepair. We're taking possession action. These listed properties would require substantial capital investment to bring them to market standard, and disposal now, even in current condition, represents a better value than the council funding repairs and holding them vacant. On the community transfer side, we're proposing a freehold transfer of St Luke's Centre and Playing Field to Duston Parish Council for a nominal £1. They already hold a 125-year lease from 2012, so this transfer recognises that local assets deliver greater community benefit when managed by the communities they serve. We're building in appropriate protections, restricted covenants on use, preemption rights if they wish to dispose, and crucially retained rights should we need the land for future infrastructure. The financial picture. The disposal of Site 11 to Cosworth, which proceeds under their existing option and doesn't require today's decision, will generate a sizable capital receipt, but costs us £240,000 per annum in rental income. As we dispose of income-generated assets, we must replace them with an income stream. That's why the recommendation asks Cabinet to note the likely need to reinvest receipts in alternative income-generating assets. This isn't optional, it's essential to our medium-term financial sustainability. It does, though, show a great continued commitment and confidence in West Northants by Cosworth. Sound asset management is part of how this administration works with officers to bring financial discipline to the authority. Officer recommendations are clear, the legal basis is sound, and the financial case is robust. I'm happy to take questions on any of these. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Slope. And I've got two speakers. First is Councillor Harris, and then Councillor Holland-Delamere. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks for that, Councillor Slope. That's very clear. My main question is St Luke's obviously is a transfer to parish. Simple question, and I appreciate you may not be able to give an answer in a public forum, but it would be useful to understand what the capital receipts expected are for the disposal of these assets. And as I say, if that needs to be taken offline, that's fine.
Councillor Holland-Delamere. Thank you, Councillor Harris. Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm really concerned to see 20 to 28 Sheep Streets on this list. I've mentioned before, sometimes I have a question about how we approach tenants who are in the voluntary community social enterprise sector. We've already talked about youth provision before, and Inspiration FM is one of those key organisations with particular communities in terms of their engagement with youth, with podcasts and radio interviews. They are well known as an important, vital community organisation within the area. I recognise the challenges for the voluntary community social enterprise sector, especially when we keep on cutting funding from our budgets, sometimes for understandable reasons, but other times where you just wonder where the alignment of our social values and those extra money that these organisations bring into our community and the ways in which they help other targets, especially in reaching hard-to-reach communities and young people. So it's disappointing to see this. And the other thing about this site as well is, whilst I understand it's not necessarily in the remit of the Greyfriars development, you've got the alleyway just up the street where we've got problems with litter, which has been tackled by Councillor Stansfield. And this whole area in this corner is an area where we've got an historic Grade 2 listed building and a number of challenges which we need to be cognizant of in terms of how it fits in with the whole Greyfriars master plan. So just caution on this one, because I have to say it is very disappointing to see this proposal for 20 to 28 Sheep Street.
Thank you, Councillor Holland-Delamere. Any questions from the floor? Stuart, do you have anything to add? You can say no.
I believe I've got a meeting in with Councillor Harris tomorrow. I think we're just finalising the exact how that will happen. So I'm more than happy to pick up the questions from Councillor Harris tomorrow, if that's okay. Is it on all of these you're after the capital receipt values, or is it in relation to the one in particular? Sorry, we'll deal with that tomorrow. Yeah. Okay. Again, more than happy to pick up those with Councillor Harris. In terms of the Sheep Street, because this is live, I don't think it would be right or appropriate to deal with the particular circumstances of that one here. But again, more than happy to pick up with Keith outside of this meeting, and Councillor Slope, I'm sure, will be happy to join us in that, just to have that conversation, if that's okay.
Thank you, Stuart. Any questions from the floor? Any points? Okay, and the Cabinet have met and discussed already. Okay, in which case I can go to a vote. A proposer from the floor, Councillor Stansfield, seconded Councillor Butler, and a vote with a show of hands, please, from all members. And that is in full unanimous. Done. That brings us to a close of tonight's meeting, the end of the agenda, and the opportunity once again to thank members of the public and other elected members who have taken time to come over and present today and speak, and for myself on behalf of all members and officers at West Northamptonshire Council to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Merry
And good
Christmas,
night.
everyone.